nesa yma bore yma, a gai croesawu Arwel Roberts yn lle Delyth heddiw. Croesawu.
Croeso cyfarfod arbennig hwn o'r Pwyllgor Craffu Cymunedau a gynhelir heddiw dydd Iau yr 11 o Ionawr 2024. Mae'r cyfarfod hwn yn cael ei we-ddarlledu a geithio unrhyw fusnes mae'r Pwyllgor yn penderfynu eithrio'r wasg a'r cyhoedd oherwydd y tebygolrwydd y datgelir gwybodaeth eithriedig fel y diffiniwyd dan Ddeddf Llywodraeth Leol 1972. Mae'r cyfarfod hwn yn cael ei gynnal fel cyfarfod hybrid gyda aelodau'r Pwyllgor Craffu Cymunedau yn mynychu'n bersonol yn siambr y cyngor neuadd y Sir Rhuthun neu o bell drwy gynhadledd fideo. At ddibenion trylwyder byddaf yn nodi pa aelodau'r Pwyllgor Cymunedau sy'n bresennol a pha un ydynt yn mynychu'n bersonol neu o bell. Yma yn y siambr mae gennym ni'r cadeirydd y cynghorydd Hugh Williams, yr is-gadeirydd y cynghorydd Karen Edwards, cynghorydd Alan James, cynghorydd James Elson, cynghorydd John Harland, cynghorydd Arwel Roberts, cynghorydd Mervyn Parry a cynghorydd Brian Jones. Ar fideo yn ymuno hefo ni fel aelodau'r Pwyllgor mae cynghorydd Michelle Blakely Walker a cynghorydd Cheryl Williams. Hefyd mae'n aelodau eraill o'r cyngor yma, aelodau arweiniol a hefyd bobl sydd wedi galw'r penderfyniad yma i fewn ynghyd â swyddogion. Gofynir yn garedig i bawb sy'n mynychu o bell i ddiffodd ei meicroffon oni bai y gelwyr arnynt i siarad. Hefyd gofynir i aelodau y Pwyllgor Craffu Cymunedau adael ei fideo ymlaen trwy'r gyfarfod oni bai fod y cadeirydd yn gofyn yn benodol i chi ddiffodd eich fideo i wella ansawdd y sain pan fyddwch yn siarad. Gofynir i chi ail ddechrau eich fideo unwaith y byddwch wedi gorffen siarad. Yn ogystal, gofynir i chi ymatal rhag defnyddio'r cyfleuster sgwrs gan fod y negeseuon o anfonir at bawb i'w gweld ar y gwe-ddarllediad. Gofynir i'r rhai sy'n bresennol yn y siambr yn wneud yn siŵr eu bod yn siarad yn uniongyrchol i'r meicroffon mwyn gwella ansawdd y sain i'r rhai sy'n mynychu o bell. Ac mwyn hwyluso trylwyder rhaid i holl fusnes y cyfarfod gael ei gynnal drwy'r cadeirydd.
Diolch, Rhian. Apologies? Any apologies?
No apologies.
Hugh Worthing's give his apologies because he's going to have to go early before he sums up at the end because he's the signature. And James has got to leave early to a prior appointment, so thank you. Declarations of interest. Gary's going to do that.
Diolch, Mr Cadeirydd. Bydd aelodau yn ymwybodol o'r gofyniad o dan god ymddygiad y cyngor i ddatgan unrhyw gysylltiad personol neu sy'n rhagfarnu mewn perthynas ag unrhyw busnes i'w ystyried yn y cyfarfod heddiw. Dylai cysylltiadau o'r fath gael ei datgelu nawr neu cyn gynted y bydd y cynghorydd yr effeithir arnynt yn ymwybodol fod ganddynt gysylltiad personol neu sy'n rhagfarnu yn y materion heddiw. Mae'n ofynnol i holl aelodau sy'n datgan cysylltiad i nodi'n glir beth yw'r cysylltiad ac i hysbysu pa un a yw'n gysylltiad personol neu'n gysylltiad personol sy'n rhagfarnu fel y diffiniwyd yn y cod ymddygiad. Mae'n ofynnol i unrhyw aelod sy'n datgan cysylltiad sy'n rhagfarnu adael y gyfarfod yn ystod y drafodaeth ac ni ellir cymryd rhan mewn unrhyw drafodion. Gall aelodau a ddiddordeb personol yn unig gymryd rhan yn y drafodaeth ac unrhyw bleidlais. Os bydd cysylltiad personol sy'n rhagfarnu yn cael ei ddatgelu heddiw nad yw wedi ddatgelu a'i gofnodi yn blaenorol, bydd yn ofynnol i'r cynghorydd dan sylw lenwi a llofnodi ffurflen datgan cysylltiad sydd yna ar gael gan staff cefnogi'r Pwyllgor sy'n bresennol heddiw neu ar-lein.
Do we have any declarations of interest? Yes, Hugh Worthing.
Do councillors occasionally use live?
No, because it's not an interest that affects you more than the general public.
Thank you for clarification.
Brian Jones, please.
Do any of the committee members on the call-in need to declare the interest, or is it taken as read?
Being a signatory to a call-in isn't an interest because it's part of your role as scrutiny members, so no.
All happy? Everybody happy? Yeah. Urgent matters agreed by the chair. There are no urgent matters agreed, so we'll move on to agenda item 4, the review of the cabinet decision related to the library's one-stop shop and shop saving proposal, which is found on page 5 to 130. We have Emrys Wynne as the lead member. We have Gwyneth as finance. I welcome you both here today, and Emrys is going to introduce it. Then we're going to go over to Hugh Irving for the reason as the main signature, and then we're going to have RHAN. I've just been told RHAN's going to introduce the paper, and Emrys is going to be there for support. Then we're going to go over to Hugh Irving, Terry, James, Justin, and Brian for their reasons for the calling as well, please. Thank you. RHAN. Diolch.
Diolch yn fawr iawn. Mae'r adroddiad o'ch blaenau chi, dwi'n siŵr bod chi wedi darllen hwnnw i gyd, ond mae'r adroddiad o'ch blaenau chi yn amlinellu'r broses o alw penderfyniad a gymerwyd gan cabinet i fewn er mwyn craffu arno. Yn atodiadau i'r adroddiad yna, mae'r cais i alw i fewn i hun, sef atodiad 4, atodiad A, sori, a atodiad B, sef yr adroddiadau ath i gabinet yn mis Rhagfyr. Mae'r adroddiad sydd o'ch blaenau chi heddiw yn nodi y rhesymau y galwyd y penderfyniad i fewn, sef mae 'na 5 ohonyn nhw i gyd. Mae bod y penderfyniad yn lleihau oriau o'r agor llyfrgelloedd o 40% yn amriodol gan y bydd y gostyngiadau yn atal gwasanaeth sy'n perfformio'n dda i gynnal ei safonau ac yn effeithio ar ddangosyddion perfformiad allweddol y cyngor. Nid yw'r effaith hon wedi ei hegluro. Mae siopau un alwad sydd wedi lleoli mewn llyfrgelloedd yn darparu cefnogaeth sylweddol i'r gymuned yn enwedig i dirigolion llai abl, na fyddant yn gallu cael cymaint o gefnogaeth bellach. Bydd mynediad y cyhoedd at dechnoleg wybodaeth yn cael ei leihau a bydd cyfleoedd i drigolion gael mynediad i amgylchedd cynnes at ddibenion cymdeithasol yn lleihau. Nid yw costau diswyddo posib ag effaith colli staff profiadol sydd wedi hyfforddi'n llawn wedi'w cyfrifo'n llawn eto na'u cynnwys yn ei ffigurau ar gyfer arbedion corfforaethol. A nid yw'r malnylion llawn yr arbedion ar agwelir wedi darparu aelodau eto. Nid yw cynghorau tref a dinas Rhydlan a Llanelwy wedi dasgan eto a fyddant yn parhau eu cefnogaeth ariannol i'w llyfrgelloedd lleol o ganlyniad i'r gostyngiad yn y gwasanaeth a gynigir, a mae angen i'r ffigurau hyn fod yn hysbys a chael eu hystyried cyn gwneud y penderfyniadau terfynol. A nid yw sefydliadau ariannol sy'n darparu gwasanaethau o adeiladau'r llyfrgelloedd eto wedi datgan a fyddant yn parhau i wneud hynny. O ganlyniad gall hyn gael effaith ar les cymunedol. Nid yw'r cynlledion ariannol o sefydliau masnachol megis y banciau fydd yn deillio trwyddynt golli mynediad i gyfleusterau llyfrgell wedi'w cyfrifo eto, ac nid yw eu colled i'r gymuned wedi'w ystyried. Yn dilyn ystyried y rhesymau yma heddiw a'r penderfyniad y cabinet yn ngoleuni y rhesymau sydd wedi cael ei rhoi ymlaen. Mi fydd 'na gyfle i chi fel pwyllgor drafod o ar ôl i chi i'r bobl sydd wedi arwyddo fo i gyflwyno eu achos nhw. Wedyn fydd yr aelodau cabinet a'r swyddogion yn ymateb i'r pwyntiau yna. Fyddwch chi wedyn yn trafod, fydd o fyny'r cadeirydd wedyn os yw'n ganiatáu i bobl allanol i'r pwyllgor yma gael gofyn cwestiynau. Ac ar ddiwedd hynny, mi fydd 'na gyfle i'r ddwy ochr grynhoi sylwadau cyn i'r pwyllgor ddod i benderfyniad. Drwch chi benderfynu unai bod yna ddim angen adolygu'r penderfyniad y cabinet. Drwch chi benderfynu gofyn i cabinet i adolygu fel, ond os ydych chi yn gwneud hynny, ydych chi angen rhoi rhesymau hollol glir ar y sail ac argymhellion newydd ymlaen hefyd. Neu mi fedrwch chi, os ydych chi eisiau, benderfynu wrach nad oes angen ail-edrych ar y penderfyniad, ond wrach ydych chi'n dal i licio rhoi sylwadau i'r cabinet ar gyfer wrach y dyfodol. Dyna'r broses fyddwn ni'n ei ddilyn.
Diolch RHAN. Emrys, ti eisiau gael y gair cyn i ni mynd i Hugh?
Hugh gyntaf.
Hugh cyntaf, sori, newid gael.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Chairman, for allowing me to outline our concerns and proposals regarding the reduction in library hours and one-stop shop services by some 40%. Wonder if you'd just allow me to ask a question before I outline my reasons. When these proposals were being worked up, did anyone actually visit library premises and witness the activities taking place there? Because yesterday, or Tuesday I should say, let me outline what I found in Prestatyn Library. I'd called to call there to visit the bank facilities available to the public on that day. What did I find? Busy premises, a queue for the lady from the bank, warm. It was warm in there. There were newspapers, so I took my place in the queue, sat down, read the paper for a few minutes, and realised in the corner of the library there was a group of youngsters singing and whatever. And I thought, what a lovely atmosphere in here. We should really be proud of this small, efficient, high-performing service. And instead of treating it as a soft target on which service cuts originally of 50% can be imposed, and then when as a result of a massive consultation response, think it is acceptable to reduce this to 40%. Public feedback that I've received seems to indicate a demoralised staff thinking that after years of loyal service, they're undervalued and not wanted. Practically, a 40% cut in an officer's salary does not equal a living wage, leaving those individuals no option but to take any redundancy package on offer and hope to find alternative work elsewhere. I wonder if this is a good way to treat staff and earn respect from those that remain. And I wonder if we've opposed cuts of this magnitude, 40%, on any other of our services. I realise that 9 cabinet members agreed these proposals. Many will suggest that there's a strong body of opinion in this council that profoundly disagrees with this, and approximately 4,750 members of the public have actually taken the trouble to respond to the consultation and object. And this morning I've been handed a detailed paper by the Unionson representative outlining a very strong objection and positive suggestions to the proposal. So to summarise my proposals as quickly as I can, firstly, they reduce the library hours by 40%, which I submit could affect the council's key performance indicators. One-stop shops are located in the libraries are key to providing support for residents, particularly the less able. Public access and assistance with IT technology will be reduced, and opportunities for the public to enter a warm, comfortable environment for social reasons will be significantly reduced. And in the cold weather last week, didn't we need it? The potential redundancy costs and the impact of losing fully trained and experienced staff are not yet available, nor as I'm aware, included in figures for corporate savings. 4. The town and city councils of Rutland and St Asaph make substantial financial contributions to their libraries. Whether they will continue to do so in the light of the proposed service cuts is not yet known, and we need to know these figures and consider them before decisions are made. And 5, outside organisations provide services through the libraries, as I experienced on Tuesday. We do not yet know if they will continue to do so. And if they don't, we need to know the impact both on the library finances and, more importantly, local communities. There's income from banks and other organisations for using library facilities. Reductions in this have not yet been calculated. Can I also add that just yesterday, I was contacted by a prominent heritage organisation who have received a substantial grant from public funds to work up a heritage project on seaside holidays. As far as Prestatyn is concerned, this is well underway, and it intended, I quote, to evoke Prestatyn in its Edwardian glory. This was intended to be located in Prestatyn Library, but this suggestion is now under threat, as are their future plans for other centres in the county. This is just but one example of how libraries work to enhance local communities. And do we really want members to throw such opportunities away? I put our case to the committee this morning. I hope other members will support us. I would hope today that the committee will send these proposals back to Cabinet for a pause and detailed reconsideration of the proposals. The financial case is not fully made yet. Costs, particularly redundancies, are not thoroughly quantified. Impact on the community is not yet fully appreciated, particularly to organisations such as dementia groups and support organisations. The amount of money concerned is manageable compared to the cost of other services. Surely there's a will to seek these savings elsewhere and preserve this important service. A public consultation has been completely ignored. Now, I will leave it now to other members to outline their support, but I do invite the committee to reject these proposals and request Cabinet members think again. I must say, Chairman, thank you for mentioning it. I do have a hospital appointment this morning. I do have to leave. I've tried to rearrange it, so it's a somewhat stressful morning for me. But thank you for listening to me, and I hope you will listen to the rest of the representations this morning.
Thank you, Hugh.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I call on Terry Mendes, please, to come forward? So felly nhw eistedd drws nesaf i Gwynedd ymlaen ar ôl hwnna.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My comments relate to item 3 of the call-in document, and this is all about saving money. I mean, it's an admirable proposition if it works, but it doesn't. We've heard that libraries are essential, or we will hear from other members that the libraries are essential. They're essential for the young to do the homework, they're essential for the underprivileged, the elderly, to keep warm and to pay the bills. They're essential for the community as a one-stop shop. We have heard all that. And I could go on. So, Mr. Chair, let's talk about money. Let's talk about savings. Where are these savings? Where are the savings of 330,000? Where are they coming from? Now, in the cabinet meeting in December, Liz Grieve was asked how many people would be made redundant, or as it's termed, voluntary exit scheme. The answer, Mr. Chairman, was none. Not one. Nobody. They're going to be reassigned to other duties. So where are the savings? They will still receive their pay. They'll still receive the generous pension contributions of between 6 and 12%. So where are the savings? If we're paying staff but closing the libraries, where are the savings? Is it the utilities? That's the only thing, the cleaning, the power, the heating, whatever. So if we're going to save, or the Cabinet proposed to save 330,000 just by closing them and saving on the utilities, does that mean the council is paying 660,000 for the power? They need to look at their contracts, I would think. Mr. Chairman, let me take you to page 18 of the report. And just in that savings, 22, 23, 24 figures. And the two boxes, frontline posts and management and supervision or supervisor reductions, they add up to just short of 280,000. Now, I presume, and I'm sure Gwyneth or Ms. Grieve will explain, that is staff costs. But we've already ascertained that nobody is going to be made redundant. They'll be moved to other areas. So they're still going to be paid by the council. Now, they may not be paid from Ms. Grieve's budget. So the savings will look good on her books, but the payment and the staffing costs will come from another area. So to me, that's just a form of creative accounting. It just doesn't make sense. If DCC's funds, if we look at it at one big pond, we're just robbing Peter to pay Paul, or we're shifting costs from one area to the other. Now, Hugh mentioned this survey, and it was the largest response ever, as I understand it. And 4,600, there are other figures being bandied about. And in the cabinet meeting in December, two of my fellow councillors spoke passionately, Hugh Hilditch Williams and particularly Bobby Feeney. She spoke very passionately about this 4,600 people, responses, with 95% against closing these libraries. That's 4,370, if anybody wants to do the maths. So 4,370 people are against the closures of these libraries, and their opinion has been overridden by 9 cabinet members. So 4,300 people, 4,370 people have been disregarded by 9 people who should be answerable to the voter. Okay, finally, this matter should go back to Cabinet because the figures simply don't add up. Simply don't add up. The savings are not there, but there are other projects that DCC are doing that can be mothballed to facilitate greater savings. And I'm not going to go into them now. Some of you around this table know what I'm advocating, but I won't go into it now. And £330,000 in the scheme of the things of 6 million this year and 26 million next year really is a drop in the ocean. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Terry. And next is James Elston.
Right, Chair, I will be brief. Right, so when Hugh asked me to be a signatory to this call-in, I was more than happy. Because I believe, like Hugh's already mentioned, that libraries have become a bit of a soft target. We've heard about the high level of engagement on this, and I'd be interested to know what that would be if you asked the whole of the county. I think, the people, 95% of the people engaged were against it, and I believe it probably could be greater across the whole of the county. I think it is vastly unpopular. I believe it's a core service. It's obviously very vital to the young and the old, as we've already heard, and we'll hear some more, I think, from my colleagues. I believe it's the duty of elected members to defend this service, which is why we're here today. The pressures we know that are on the budget within the council are great, and it equates to about 10% across the board. We've heard that this is representing a 22% cut in libraries budget and a 40% cut consequently in the delivered service, which is unfair and disproportionate. I'd feel that if these services are cut, they may never be reversed. I believe it is a one-way street for the libraries down which we should not turn. I believe that this proposal should be sent back to Cabinet and put on the spike of bad ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, James. And Justin Evans, do you want to come forward?
Hi, yes, thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm not going to go over all the points that have already been raised, although, I fully support everything that's already been said by my colleagues today. But as a councillor in Rhyl, where we all know deprivation levels are high, one of my primary concerns regarding these changes is the impact it will have on our more vulnerable children and young people. Sadly, there are a great many children out there who don't have a warm, quiet space to study. There are many with disruptive home lives, and libraries, library provide them with a sanctuary, a place to get away from all that is going on at home, a place where they can study in peace. Every child deserves to have the same opportunities regardless of their background, and I believe Denbighshire County Council will be denying our young people this if they push ahead with these reduced opening hours. Like I say, I fully support everything that Hugh said, and Terry and James, and I feel that this decision needs to go back to the Cabinet for them to reconsider. Thank you.
Thank you, Justine. And next is Brian Jones. Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Not a lot to say on it really, because most of it's already been said by my fellow colleagues, and Councillor Ann Davies is yet to speak. So I fully support it. We've been through it in private. We understand the pressures on the council as a whole, but this particular saving shouldn't be on the table, and I'll have the benefit of summing up at the end, so I can expand on that then. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Brian. Protocol is that this group asks questions after we hear the other side, and then we can go outside after. And we've had requests from the union to speak as well, which we're going to oblige to do. As you know, I'm obliged to do. So I feel happy letting you speak. So we'll go from that. Emrys, a lot of comments about the saving, the wages saving. I think that came out of what was said there. But I'll let you have your say now. And Del, if you feel you need to, Gwyneth, sorry, I'm useless at names. Gwyneth, if you feel you need to come in after Emrys, please do. Diolch.
Yep, diolch yn fawr iawn, Cadeirydd, a diolch i'r Pwyllgor Craffu am gael y cyfle i fod yma ger bron chi heddiw. Cyn i mi fynd at fynediadau fy hun, fi'n meddwl bod y swyddog wedi deud am cynnig 5, wedi defnyddio'r gair nid yw sefydliadau ariannol sy'n darparu gwasanaeth allanol ddyle hwnna fod. Dwi'n meddwl mai dyna ddoth allan. Dwi'n ymddiheuro os wedi camglywed, dwi'n meddwl bod wedi clywed yn gywir. Iawn, diolch. Peth cyntaf dwi eisiau dweud ydy i bod yn dda gwybod bod y aelodau'n pryderu am cynnig y llyfrgell. Rydw i hefyd yn bryderus yn ei gylch, ac dwi'n hyderus na fyddai'r cabinet wedi cytuno i'r cynnig pe ba'r sefyllfa ariannol yn wahanol. Mae angen i ni gofio bod yr her gyllidebol sy'n wynebu'r cyngor ar hyn o bryd yn ddigynsel, ac yn y cyd-destun hwn y gwnaed y penderfyniad hwn. Wnaethim yn gwbl glir yn nghyfarfod y cabinet nad yw'r penderfyniad i leihau'r gwasanaeth y llyfrgell yn gyfforddus i mi. Fodd bynnag, dwi hefyd yn glir iawn nad oes gennym yn anffodus unrhyw ddewis, ond derbyn gostyngiad yn y gwasanaeth llyfrgell os yw'r cyngor am ymateb i'r her ariannol a gosod cyllideb gytbwys. Dwi hefyd yn glir iawn bod y penderfyniad yn diogelu ein llyfrgelloedd i'r graddau y mae'n bosibl gwneud hynny yn yr hinsawdd ariannol hon. Mae'n bwysig pwysleisio bod y cynnig yn sicrhau na fydd unrhyw lyfrgell yn Sir Ddinbych yn gorfod cau. Dwi hefyd yn gyfforddus bod y cabinet wedi gwrando ac wedi ymateb i'r adborth o'r ymgynghoriad gyhoeddus. Y penderfyniad oedd i leihau oriau agor llyfrgelloedd tua 40%, yn hytrach na'r gostyngiad o 50% a gynigwyd yn wreiddiol, sy'n arwain at tua 80 awr o oriau agor ychwanegol o gymharu â'r cynnig yr ymgynghorwyd arno. Felly gyda chalon drom yr argymhellis i'r cynnig i'r cabinet, doeddwn i ddim am dorri'r gwasanaeth llyfrgell o gwbl, ond mae'r penderfyniad a wnaed gan y cabinet yn cynrychioli canlyniad gorau posibl i'r llyfrgelloedd o ystyried y sefyllfa ariannol rydym ynddi. Dwi'n amlwg yn parchu'r hawl i aelodau i alw penderfyniad y cabinet i mewn, a dyn ni hapus iawn i drafod y materion yn godwyd yn y ddogfen galw i mewn heddiw. Dyna'n ngeiriau agoriadol i.
Diolch, Emrys. Gwyneth, gael yn iawn tro yma. Ti eisiau?
Diolch. Mi fyswn i'n hoffi ymateb i'r sylwadau wneithwyd gen yr aelodau fydd yn siarad os di hynna'n yn iawn. Reit, felly, fe ddywedodd Hyw gyntaf fod yr ymgynghoriad wedi cael ei anwybyddu. Dwi ddim yn teimlo bod hynny'n wir. Dwi'n teimlo'n gry iawn fod 100% o'r cabinet yn erbyn y toriadau yma. Da ni'n mynd hapus efo'r toriadau. Da ni'n isio gwneud y toriadau. Ond mae rhaid i ni, oherwydd y sefyllfa ariannol sydd wedi cael ei gorfodi, a ddim yn unig arna ni, ond ar bob un cyngor awdurdod lleol ym Mhrydain, mae'r broblem yma'n bod. Ond does na ddim digon o ariannu gyn Llywodraeth San Steffan ar awdurdodau lleol. Felly, da ni yn y sefyllfa yma, lle da ni yn hi, a da ni'n gorfod gwneud rhywbeth amdano beth. Da ni'n mynd anwybyddu, ma' Emrys wedi ystyried yn ddwys yr ymgynghoriad, a da ni wedi edrych arni oherwydd hynny. Os ga i ddod at... un peth arall 'swn i'n licio, mae Huw wedi sôn amdan ddangosyddion perfformiad allweddol fydd yn cael ei effeithio, a mi fyswn i'n hoffi gwybod pa ddangosyddion penodol mae o'n boeni amdanyn nhw. Os fysa hynny... Na i orffan a ella geith Huw ddod yn ôl a deitha fi wedyn. Neu unrhyw un arall o'r aelodau nath arwyddo'r y galwad i fewn. Mi ddoth Terry wedyn a sôn am y ffaith na fydda na ddim diswyddiadau. A dwi'n meddwl bod o wedi ella ddim cweit cofio y drafodaeth yn gywir yn y cabinet yn fan'na, achos mae hi'n bosib y bydd na ddiswyddiadau. Da ni'n gobeithio na fydd na ddim y bydd hi'n bosib symud pobl o gwmpas, ond mae o'n gywir yn edrych ar y ffigurau, mae'r rhan fwyaf o'r arbedion yn dod o gyfloga. Felly mae yn bosib y bydd na ddiswyddiadau. Da ni wedi bod yn hollol agored amdan hynny o'r dechrau. Mae hynny'n rhywbeth arall mae'r cabinet wedi ystyried wrth ddod i'r penderfyniad yma, felly dydy o ddim yn gywir. Does na ddim creative accounting yn digwydd yn fan hyn. Mae'r arbedion yn arbedion gwir, felly. Mi nath Terry hefyd sôn am brosiect oedd o'n meddwl fysa'n cael ei mothbolio yn gallu cael ei atal mwyn sicrhau na fyddai unrhyw doriadau eraill yn gorfod cael ei wneud. Dwi'n ama hynny, dwi ddim yn ymwybodol o un prosiect fysa'n gallu cael ei atal ar hyn o bryd, fysa'n arbad swm sylweddol i'r cyngor o gwbl. Felly, os ydy o'n gwybod am hyn, dwi'n gofyn iddo fo os gwelwch chi'n anodd o rannu hynny hefo ni. Mi nath James sôn amdan stryd un ffordd da ni'n mynd lawr hi. Da ni'n gwybod fod y gwasanaeth llyfrgell wedi cael i'w dorri nôl yn 2010, pan nath Llywodraeth San Steffan adeg hynny ddechrau ar yr austerity. A pan nath hynny ddigwydd yn 2010, mi oedd o'n stryd un ffordd. Nath na ddim byd ddod yn ôl. Nath yr gwasanaeth ddim cynyddu pan nath y sefyllfa ariannol wella. Ond mae Emrys yn mynd i sefydlu gweithgor ar hyn o bryd mwyn edrych ar sut allan ni ella drwy ddilliau amgen gynyddu'r gwasanaeth yn y dyfodol. Felly dwi'n meddwl bod hynna'n dangos fod o i ni yn bwysig ar hyn o bryd bod hwn ddim yn stryd un ffordd am bod ni'n chwilio am ffordd yn ôl. A mi nath Justine sôn amdan yr impact ar y bobl sy'n ella'r gallu diodda hynny yn cymdeithas ni, ac mae hynny eto, mae hynny wedi cael ei ystyried yn y penderfyniadau da ni wedi cymryd fel cabinet. Mae yna well-being impact assessment wedi cael ei wneud ar hyn, mae o'n negyddol. Da ni'n fel cabinet yn hollol ymwybodol nad ydy hwn ddim yn benderfyniad sy'n mynd i fod o fantais i neb, mae'n mynd i fod yn anfantais. Felly, dwi'n ystyried fel cabinet pan oedden ni'n cymryd y penderfyniad, yr holl bethau sydd yn y ddogfen yma, dwi'n meddwl yn bod ni wedi hystyried nhw. Heblaw ella'r prosiect yma sydd fysa'n gallu cael ei fothbolio, fysa'n achub y byd i ni, ond am bob dim arall mi da ni wedi ystyried o. A felly... dyna ni. Diolch yn fawr iawn chi.
Diolch, Gwyneth. Dwi'n mynd i galw a Liz a Tony, if maen nhw eisiau gwneud gair, a wedyn dwi'n mynd yn ôl at y signatories i dod yn ôl i siarad efo Emrys a Gwyneth. Ar ôl Tony a Liz, geith gan nhw'n mateb yn ôl, ia? A wedyn, I see Richard, tam mae Pwyllgor yma wedi gofyn cwestiynau, wedyn nawn ni ddod allan wedyn. Oce, diolch. Liz or Tony?
Thank you, Chair. I'll start if I may, Liz. Just to pick up on a couple of the issues that have been raised so far this morning, and Gwyneth has responded to a great many of them already. But in terms of, I think the first question that was raised by Councillor Hugh Irving, I do think the head of service and the lead member are very familiar with the activities that take place within our libraries. I think they probably are more familiar than anybody about those things, and so I don't think anybody has developed any of these proposals blindly without taking those things into account. I think it's very difficult for the head of service and the lead member to have developed the proposal because they are obviously entrenched in the library service and support it greatly. So that's one point I wanted to make. Gwyneth has addressed the issue around the savings, and I would agree the savings are there. What we did say at Cabinet that we do hope to minimise the number of redundancies as part of this this process, and as members know, we have tried at the moment not to fill all of the vacant posts that are being carried by the council, and one of the reasons we're doing that is to allow for potential opportunities for people who are at risk of redundancy to move into different roles. That's something we'll actively try to do. We can't guarantee that that's going to happen in every case, which is why there is a risk of redundancies from this proposal and this decision. But we're very clear about that, and Cabinet were very clear about that, in my view, when Cabinet considered the issue and made the decision. There was a point about the libraries being kind of a soft touch or an easy target, if you like, and that this was a disproportionate impact on the library service. I think the reality is, and I think members are aware of the overall financial position and the fact that there will be many council services that are subject to significant cuts over the next 6 months, and therefore a 22% reduction in the library budget is not disproportionate in that context. I think there will be many other council services which are subject to much higher percentage of budget cuts than that. So I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. But I think the overall point, and Gwyneth has made the point already, but I would agree with it, is that Cabinet debated the issues that have been raised in the call in the 5 reasons at great length during their debate, and they made the decision reluctantly, I would say. They made the decision with those issues in mind. None of us like this. I think that's fair to say, and that goes for officers as well as the Cabinet. But obviously, from my perspective, the Cabinet were fully cited on those issues and made the decision, as I say, a balanced judgment with those things in mind. So that's my overall perspective on the issue, Chair. But I don't know if Liz would like to come in with anything more specific. Thank you.
Liz?
Diolch. I think that most of the points have been answered by the lead members and by Tony. I think the one point I would make is that the decision by Cabinet to reduce the core budget by the percentage that's been discussed is for me and my team a starting point, and you know, I know as well as anybody the value and impact of our library service, and so it's you know, my commitment to mitigate the reduction in that core budget by working in partnership with any willing partners, so that we can maximise the maximise the use of the library service and the library buildings going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Terry, I'm going to call you back, and there were some questions that Gwyneth would like, and but you're not coming backwards and forwards. This is you know, I can't go back and forwards all day, but so I'm going to allow all the speakers to come back, and then we're going to go to the group. Okay.
I don't want to come back and forth, Mr. Chairman. I'm quite happy to answer the questions. Okay, I made a few notes. Emrys mentioned that we had no choice. That was exactly that. No choice to save this money, but not one of the 4 speakers, not one of 4, has actually explained where this 280,000, again, I'll bring you back to page 18 of the report, and the frontline posts and the management and supervision or supervisor reductions add up to just short of 280,000. Nobody has actually mentioned where that figure came from and how are those savings. Now, Gwyneth came along and said that that possible that there will be job losses. It'll be possible. Tony Ward mentioned minimize redundancies. Liz Grieve didn't mention anything about redundancies. So again, I come back to what I said earlier. Where is this 280,000 come from? Now, Gwyneth also mentioned that it's not possible, or she's not aware of projects where it could save more money. Okay, well, just one that I can think of, Mr. Chairman, is the Queen's Market in Rill. Now, I thank Tony for he's furnished me with some information very recently, and I haven't had time to digest it, and I will get back to Tony on that. But other projects, I mean, just for example, the Queen's Market, they've spent 13.5 million in Rill on this white elephant that doesn't have an operator.
Okay, let's just hold it there for a minute. I'm going to ask Liz Thomas to come in, and then I'll come back to you, Gwyneth, if that's okay. Liz, can you explain so far the questions Sally's come? Sally, don't go off the subject, please.
Okay, thank you. Diolch yn fawr. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. Just to clarify then, I suppose, the costs that we're talking about and how they have an impact and what was discussed at the cabinet meeting. So when you've got proposals such as these, you know, you can't be certain what the redundancy costs are going to be. We're talking about county-wide proposals affecting a number of individual members of staff that are all in different locations. So until a decision is made by Cabinet, you can't move forward with those discussions and then determine what the actual redundancy costs will be. Those individual members of staff will need to make their decisions, and the redundancy cost will be linked to those as individuals, what their career histories are. So there'll be it's difficult to determine what they are. What was included in the cabinet report, and that's in the financial costs area, was a range. So it had a range so that Cabinet were aware of what the range of those potential redundancy costs could be. The minimum was 0 because everybody could be redeployed into vacant posts across the council, which Tony has already mentioned, and the maximum was stated. So in bringing the proposal together, Liz, as head of service, has looked through the staff structure that she's got now compared to what this proposed staff structure would be around the opening hours for each one of the libraries, and costed out then what the cost would be were those people all to need to be made redundant on a compulsory basis. So we have the range, and it was from 0 to 236,000 in redundancy costs. That's the best information that Cabinet could have had, and it's still the best information that we've got in order to discuss the proposal. What I would say is that redundancy costs are one-off costs, so they're incurred once, so they would be incurred in year 1 when you're introducing the proposal. They're not recurring costs, which is what the savings are. So that the savings are, just to clarify, they're 360,000. I think a figure of 330 was mentioned. So they're 360,000, and they are included in a table. There's no mention of utility costs. The majority of the savings will be from staff reductions. If those staff are redeployed into other budgets that we hold within our overall 260 million pound budget, they will move into those. They're a budget for those, and therefore we can reduce the budget in the library. So I'm confident that we would be able to make that £360,000 saving. In the budget workshops that we've been holding over the past few months, though that £360,000 figure is included in there as part of the major savings proposals. So it is included in how we move forward and hopefully set a balanced budget later on this month. And remember, these are recurring savings. So by the time we get to year 5, we will have made £360,000 worth of saving every year. So in year 5, we'll be at 1.8 million in terms of savings that build up as we go through the years. Does that help to sort of clarify the costs issue?
Diolch, Liz. Gwyneth, cyn ti bod nôl, dwi'n isio agor, sorry, I'll speak to you. I don't want to open a debate on budget savings today with Terry's previous comments, so can we just park that for a budget briefing if you don't mind?
That's fine. I mean, what I will answer, Terry, you know, the answer that Liz just gave now is comprehensive, but, and I think this is key for this meeting, Cabinet were fully aware of that. That was absolutely clear during the Cabinet meeting. The savings were mostly coming from staff savings and that there may be redundancies. That was always clear. Cabinets were fully cited on that when we made our decision. Very, very quickly on the Queen's Market.
I'm not having it. No, we're not having it. I've stopped Terry and I'm going to stop you. Sorry, diolch with it.
Well, yeah, I just come back to this figure and that, and Liz Thomas, not this Liz, the far Liz, she actually explained that, yeah, that staff that front Liz will save, will go to another department. So that just reinforces what I said before, that the budget will come out of Liz Grieve, or the savings that Liz Grieve will make.
Can I just stop you for a second? I'll just bring Gary Williams in for 1 second.
I think it's just probably to understand the nature of what happens when an organisation like this, which is a good employer, has to tackle difficult situations around redundancy. What is very clear is that the reduction, as explained by Liz, will be a reduction in the number of people required to work in the library service if this decision is implemented. That will mean that those people will be at risk of redundancy. Now, what we would be looking to do would be to work with those people to identify whether or not it was possible to redeploy them into other vacant posts within the authority. If they were to be redeployed within those vacant posts, there would be no redundancy payment and they would be in posts for which there is already a budget. So the money that pays them whilst they work in the libraries does not move to anywhere else. The money that pays them in any redeployed position is money that exists in that service. So the saving is made because you're overall spending less money on staff, because whilst the people may have moved to another location, you're paying less money for staff because you're not paying them to be in the library service. I think that's fairly clear, but I just wanted to sort of underline the point, if that helps.
Thank you, Gary. Terry?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, I come back to this figure that of 280,000 savings, and everybody's saying it's nailed on savings. Well, it's not, because, you know, possible that there would be job losses, minimize redundancies. There's no hard and fast figure on how many staff are going to be cut and where the savings will be made.
Thanks, Terry. Would anybody else like to have a from the signatures like to come forward and yeah, James, thank you. Thanks, Terry.
Again, briefly, in response to Tony's figure that 22% is what should be the norm. If we're trying to save 10% across the board, and the library service is having to take a 22% cut, and other areas might be worse, as he said, who's getting away light? And I say, is that fair? I said disproportionate. I still hold by my phrase of disproportionate. If the library service and other services are taking 22% hit, when overall we need 10% across the board. Thank you.
They're fighting to answer this question, but I think it's Liz Thomas is answering it.
Yeah, I understand the question. Look, when it comes to you know our budget gap, as we heard on what day of the week it was, Tuesday afternoon, I'm forgetting where I am. On Tuesday afternoon, you know, we're needing to make, to be able to set a balanced budget. We have got an increase in cost and pressures of 24.5 million. There is no right or wrong way of approaching how we do this, but what we have to recognise is we've got different services in different places. We have our two biggest budgets are schools and social services. You would have heard me quote on Tuesday afternoon that they're between 60 and 70%. You know, it isn't possible to do this in an equal way of giving a percentage reduction to every service in an equal way, because services are in different positions. You know, we have been discussing the way our budget strategy for this year, and one of those was to come up with major savings proposals, and each head of service has brought those forward, and this is how we come to the library. The proposal was from a much higher savings. I think it was 450,000 originally. So, but you know, we had a consultation, and the cabinet have responded to that consultation, and it's come down. So that wouldn't have worked had we issued everybody with a percentage savings target. It's a difficult question to answer, though. Tony, I don't know if you've got anything to add to that.
No, I think, thanks, Liz. I think what you've said is correct, isn't it? You know, it's just not, it just wouldn't have been a reasonable approach to take, or it wouldn't have been possible to have just said to every service, right, you've got to save 10% of your budget, because some services are in a better position to be able to do that than others. We know that there are huge pressures on social care budgets, for example, already, and those services, because they are demand-led, and those demands are increasing year on year, and costs of delivering those services are going up year on year, they really struggle to stay within their existing budgets. And cutting 10% of those budgets means that people won't be receiving care in children's services and in adult social care. Now, that's when it becomes a really difficult situation, and which is why I was saying, for some functions in the council, they're likely to see bigger budget reductions than 22%, because the saving for each individual function of the council can't be the same. The percentage reduction can't be the same for each one. So for some services, the reductions for some functions, the reduction in their budget might be zero, because it's impossible to reduce it. But for some functions, the reduction might be 100%. There may be some functions in the council that we just have to stop doing. So the cut will be 100% in the budget for that function. Some will be in between. And this is one of those where the proposal or the decision that was made by Cabinet was to reduce it by somewhere in between, because it was felt that there was a proposal there that was manageable, and although regrettable, it is manageable, and because the council has to make these savings, and even with this saving and all the other savings that are currently on the table, there is still a gap. So it's not like we're at the moment, we're not in a position to say, well, it's this one, or or we'll pick something else off the list. You know, there are many more savings to find yet, and heads of service are currently in that process of identifying what else they're going to have to stop doing over and above this proposal and all the other ones we've already discussed.
Thanks,
So I hope that helps.
Okay, Justine, do you want to come back? No. Brian, do you want to come back? No. I'll open it up to the committee then, please. I think Mervyn had his hand up first, actually.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of things, really. I mean, on the paper we've got page 17, 4.4, just to quote it, there are only two ways to make significant savings in the library one-stop shop services: either close libraries or reduce the opening hours of libraries. Very short sentence. not very wide in its thoughts, although there are further bits in it. But you know, and we've also today had a letter from Unison, you know, which should probably put as a fairly strong Labour voting organisation, really, who are against it. Is anybody from Unison talking today on it?
Yes, he's allowed to talk
Okay,
at the end.
fine.
Thank you. Thank you.
So you can see some of the supports there, but I just think that, you know, that there are areas that we're not missing, that we're missing, you know, like sort of things that we could do with the library. We're at the finishing post here, really, with this job, and we're almost getting pushed to make decisions because this budget has got to be in by, I don't know when's it got to be decided, by end of January or end of March or whenever it is now. It's sort of quite confusing because we're having heads of services coming to us in March to give us some decisions, but I'm not sure when you've got to make the decision on your budget. So we've got like 3 minutes, 3.5 seconds to decide on whether that's right before we give you a yes or no to that. And we've known since over 12 months ago, and I know, Liz, you weren't here then, but we've known since over 12 months ago that we were in problems, and, you know, because we've all had to deal with that budget in our own households to deal with increased electric, reduced thing, you know, everybody's after sort of more money. So we know about things like that, really. We've known about it. So I just feel that we've pushed into it. You know, have we looked at, because, you know, the libraries are being used as community hubs sort of thing. Has anybody looked at, I call them Gwyntamore and Gwyntamynydd. You know, we've got the wind farms off the coast. We've got the Brennig and Pwyllgor up there. Have we looked at possibly maybe being able to ask them to see if we can support? Because the response that's come back from the library is showing a massive response of public need, bigger than anything that's ever come in as a consultation since I've been on the council, and probably since Bobby Feely's been on the council. It's been a bit longer than me, and I don't think she might tell me whether there's been anything that's had a response that big. So there's a public interest in the library, and we should be looking at different sort of funding on this one. Now then, just going back onto Tuesday's discussion that Graham Borse said to us, and Tony maybe answer this one. Graham Borse said that, you know, redundancies, we put a case out across the county for voluntary redundancies. Now, in the library one, let's so to keep it within the library, the voluntary redundancies there are in the libraries. Graham said that some of them, we won't make them redundant because they're too expensive to make redundant. So if somebody's been in the library service and they're too expensive to make redundant, do we say, no, you can't be made redundant because you're too expensive to go? That's one question. And the other question is, with moving them across from jobs to jobs, from the library to, so can we make a librarian, can we force a librarian to, say, be a bin wagon driver or maybe work in the new refuge place in Denby? Have they got a choice of what they're going to do? If they don't want to do it, and they've been in position for 25 years and they're expensive to get rid of, do they have a choice as an employee to do that? I'm sure I've rabbited on enough for now. There's a few questions there that maybe you can answer.
Gary is going to answer the first one, and maybe Tony the second one about bin lorry drivers.
Diolch, Mr. Cadeirydd. I think we're talking about two different things. So the voluntary redundancy or voluntary exit scheme, because it's not just about redundancy, is about asking members of staff across the organisation whether or not they would be interested in leaving the organisation on a voluntary basis through a mixture of redundancy or retirement, etc. Now, clearly that's a voluntary situation, and the council would have to look at each individual application, and the process is in place where those people who've made a formal request to be able to leave on a voluntary basis will have their cases considered. And in considering that, there are two essential criteria. Number one, that the cost of that exit has to be such that there is a saving that's being made within a reasonable period. And secondly, whether or not that is a role that the council can afford to do without or not. What you're talking about, and the issue with the cost on voluntary exit is that it's not just the amount of money that gets paid to the individual, it's the amount of money it costs the council in terms of compensating the pension fund, etc., for that early release. So some of those figures can reach a very high level very quickly. And that's not money that goes to the individual, but it's money that it costs the council, and therefore the council would say that's not something that we.
Because I wasn't asking, I said excluding the big council, I was focusing merely on the redundancies in the library, not about the whole council. I said.
No, I know, but you asked about voluntary. I'm trying to explain the difference between voluntary and compulsory. Okay, so where the council is looking to reduce staffing in an area, then it has to consult on those proposals with staff, and those staff are at risk of compulsory redundancy. And the key word there is that they are at risk of compulsory redundancy. Where we have compulsory redundancies, we are obliged to try and avoid those compulsory redundancies where we can, by looking at whether or not across the suite of jobs that we have and vacancies that we have, that there is possible to redeploy people. And there's a conversation that needs to take place between the individual and the council to see whether or not there are suitable alternative roles for them to be redeployed into. If they're redeployed into those roles, then they get to continue with their employment, and the council avoids a redundancy payment. The issue of whether or not those roles is suitable will depend upon the individuals and the roles that are there. And people have to be offered suitable redeployment opportunities. It's not about just dropping people from something they have no sort of possible ability to do, etc. But there's a conversation that takes place. But this authority will treat people with respect and with dignity, and will go through those proposals and make sure that we seek to avoid compulsory redundancy where we can. Where we can, then we will observe our obligations and we will make the appropriate payments. But the voluntary scheme is a separate thing to compulsory redundancies. I hope that clarifies that.
Thank you, Gary. Emrys, ti eisiau dod nôl, sori, os ni dod i ddigyn to, sori.
Diolch yn fawr iawn. Gai ymateb yn sydyn i rhai o sylwadau dwi wedi glywed. Rwan, gai ateb Hywyrfing i ddechrau. Dwi wedi ymweld â phob llyfrgell ddwy waith yn ystod y flwyddyn a hanner dwytha. Ac yr tro dwytha oedd ochr oedd yn arwain at y cyfarfod cabinet yn mis Rhagfyr. Dwi eisoes yn mynd yn ôl i'r llyfrgelloedd fesul un i alw heibio hefyd. Ac o ran ymateb i'r sylwadau yn yr ymgynghoriad, mae'r adroddiad yn dangos yn glir bod ni wedi ymateb i y sylw penna sydd dod i fyny, a mae yna sawl sylw arall hefyd, ond y sylw penna ydy colli'r defnydd o'r llyfrgelloedd ar gyfer grwpiau allanol. Mi fydd modd i'r llyfrgelloedd fod ar agor tu allan i oriau arferol y llyfrgell, a fydd yn caniatáu wedyn i grwpiau allanol ddefnyddio y llyfrgell. Felly fydd o ddim yr union ar y diwrnod maen nhw'n dymuno wedi arfer y gael wrach, ond yn sicr mi fydd yr gwasanaeth y sir yn mynd ati i geisio sicrhau bod unrhyw un sydd angen defnyddio'r llyfrgell tu allan i oriau llyfrgell bod yna modd cael mynediad. Cofiwch hefyd, does yna ddim rheswm pam y bydde unrhyw sefydliad allanol yn rhoi gorau i ddefnyddio gwasanaeth yn y llyfrgell. Den ni eisoes den ni'n mynd i sefydlu grŵp mwyn edrych ar sut den ni'n mynd i allu defnyddio'r gwasanaeth yn wahanol. A mi fydd gen pob aelod gyfle i ddod yn aelod o'r grŵp hwnnw mwyn gyrru'r gyrru mlaen gyda dulliau y fedrwn ni wella'r gwasanaeth o'r hyn fydd gennym ni o'r gael y toriad yma. Mi fydd yna adroddiad yn dod ar y gwasanaeth llyfrgell ger bron Pwyllgor Craffu diwedd y mis yma. Dwi'n gobeithio'n arw y byddwn ni ymhen blwyddyn arall yn gallu rhoi adroddiad yr un mor galonogol ar hyn dyn ni wedi cael eisoes yn y gorffennol, a dyn ni'n disgwyl y bydd gennym ni yn mis Ionawr yma. A byddwn ni'n gallu gwneud yn siŵr bod y gwasanaeth dyn ni eisoes yn ei ddarparu yn parhau i'w gael ei ddarparu, falle mewn ffordd chydig yn wahanol mewn mannau.
Diolch, Emrys. Liz, did you want to come in quick? And I think James is off. Is he?
Yeah. Can I just say a quick
yes.
Thing about I've got to go to a prior meeting. I know this is very important. Is it possible for me to give me a proxy vote to Brian Jones? No. So if I'm not here, I don't get the vote. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just the point about the wind farm money that you raised at the beginning. The council can't apply for wind farm grant funding directly, but there is grant funding available for a number of different activities which could be hosted in libraries. So that's one of the areas that we'd be looking for to mitigate the impact of the reduction in this core budget. And that would either be directly or indirectly by reviewing our charging policy and bringing in income into the libraries to be able to maintain their opening.
Nobody wants to come back, thank you. And then Arwell.
Yeah,
Right.
that's all very good. But by the time we've done this, we've lost some staff, key staff from the libraries. And then, you know, and it's all very good that Emrys's discussion of having to have, you know, it's a bit like that we've left the door open and the horses buggered off down the field a little bit. You know, I think we're talking that sort of strategy really a little bit. And I just think that maybe that I would think that possibly is a possibility. If there are possibilities of doing something on that item 4, it says there's only 2 ways of doing it: either cut the libraries or close them. Whereas there are other options of doing that, and I would like to see that maybe somebody who's doing the recommendation today might add to the recommendation that we stall this recommendation to look at other things. If there are if there are options that are available to make the libraries more that they're going to survive with the staff that's there by exterior funding coming in, I don't think we should let it all fall apart without looking a little bit further because we're only looking at possibly a saving of 320,000. It's not big money, and we're not sure that it's 320,000. It might not be anywhere near that. So it's very vague to me that I think that on the amount of the size of the budget we've got to save, that I think we should give it a little bit more time to look at external funders or funding that could come in to save the life of the library. Thank you.
Gwyneth,
Diolch. Dwi'n teimlo dwi ymddiheuro achos dwi'n newydd i'r system graffu yma, fel da chi'n gwybod, dwi'n amhrofiadol fel cynghorydd, felly yn y stafell yma dwi'n un o'r rei mwyaf amhrofiadol, felly dwi'n ond i fi, be o'n i'n ddisgwyl heddiw, oedd fod y Pwyllgor Craffu yn edrych ar sut oeddan ni fel cabinet wedi dod i benderfyniad. Hynny ydi, ddim cael cyfiawnhad gen y swyddogion, ond cael cyfiawnhad gen ni fel cabinet bod ni wedi cael yr holl wybodaeth oedden ni angen i ddod i benderfyniad. I atab cwestiwn Merfyn, mae hyn yn gwestiwn eithon ni ofyn hefyd, oes na ddilliau amgan fedrwn ni chwilio am grantiau ac yn y blaen. Mae'n bosib fod na, ond o ran arbad arian ar gyfer y gyllideb, a mae hyn yn bwysig, dyma pam bod y penderfyniad yma wedi cael ei wneud, mwyn arbad arian ar gyfer y gyllideb y flwyddyn yma, yr unig ddewis oedd gynnon ni oedd beth sydd wedi cael ei roed yn y ddogfen. Wan, mae Emrys wedi mynnu bod ni'n sefydlu gweithgor mwyn edrych ar bethau fel hyn yn y dyfodol. Da ni'n ymwybodol bod nhw yn bosibiliadau, ond ella bydd rhaid newid y dull o weithredu'r llyfrgelloedd neu beth bynnag fel mae Liz yn dweud, mwyn gallu cael mynediad at y grantiau. Ond fel cabinet, da ni wedi holi'r cwestiynau yma mewn cyfarfodydd agored hyd yn oed, a da ni fel cabinet yn saff yn hunan na mwyn arbad arian ar gyfer y gyllideb yma, a dyna sy'n rhaid ni'n neud, na dyna'r unig ddewis oedd gyda ni.
Okay, apologise if you think I'm chairing the meeting, Poor, but I like to let everybody have their voice so we can get down to the nitty gritty and see what's on. This is what I've done for the last 6 or 7 years, and that's how I run the meeting. So everybody gets a voice, you had a voice, they've had a voice, everybody gets a voice, so we'll move on. Arwel, diolch.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Sir Cadeirydd. Eglurhad pam nad ydy Delyth yma, mae Delyth yn gyfargol arbenigwr meddygol. Felly mi ofynnwyd a faswn i modlon dod yn ei lle hi. Dyna pam dwi yma. Mae llyfrgelloedd yn rhan bwysig o bob sir. Dwi wedi darllen o dogfennau yn fawr ac mae nhw yn bwysig i'n cymunedau ni. I ddefnyddio'r Saesneg, they are warm and social hubs. Dyna le i ymarfer eich Cymraeg. Mae am yn effeithio ar y Gymraeg, yn sicr ar y iaith Gymraeg. Rheina sydd eisiau dysgu'r Gymraeg a rheini sydd yn hyddysg yn ei Gymraeg fel finne. Menter iaith, pan o'n i'n gadeirydd, dwi'n dal ar y Pwyllgor Menter iaith. Pan y Menter iaith yn trio gorau i ddefnyddio'r llyfrgelloedd yma. A cwestiwn byddai'n ofyn, pan ar i Emrys ddeud fanna, bydd pob asiant i allan yn gallu defnyddio y llyfrgelloedd. Ond dydy llyfrgell Rhydlan, er enghraifft, os ydych chi'n mynd trwy'r hyn, dim ond agored am 15 awr. Dim ond am 15 awr fydd hi'n agored. Ydy'r bobl sydd eisiau defnyddio'r llyfrgell pan mae hi ar gau yn gorfod talu am defnyddio'r lle. Mae'r ymgymgoriad yn bendant yn erbyn y toriadau. Da ni'n deall hynny. Ac mae'r llyfrgelloedd yma yn asedau i'r sir. Be sy'n mynd i ddigwydd pan maen nhw ar gau? Wast. Dydy bobl ddim yn mynd cael eu defnyddio nhw. Byddwn nhw ddim yna. Da chi'n mynd i dorri a weithgarau i blant am ddim. Colli cyfle i ddefnyddio'r llyfrgelloedd i wneud eu gwaith cartre. Helpu pobl sydd heb ymgyrchedd atgyfriaduron. Mae'n mynd i effeithio ar bobl sydd yn rhan o'n cymunedau ni. Mae pobl angen hyfforddiant i ddilyn sydd yn defnyddio'r cyfriaduron. Ac mae pobl difreintiedig fydd yn dioddau eto, ynde. Pobl di-gyfriaduedig. Libraries are the lifeblood of our community. Dyna ddudodd rhywun yn yr ymgynghoriad. I don't drive. My library is my lifeline. A pam na fedrwch chi feddwl am agor pob mewn ffordd rwan, pam na fedrwch chi feddwl am agor pob llyfrgell ar fore Sadwrn? Dyna pryd mae plant eisiau dod yna. Edrychwch ar rwan, fel mae Myrfyn wedi dweud. Chwiliwch am arian rwan, cyn na wneud y toriadau, i chwilio am ffordd i agor nhw ar fore Sadwrn. Mae fore Sadwrn yn hynod o bwysig i chi gyd. Ac felly, dwi'n edrych nawr ar Rhydlan. Mae'r Rhydlan wedi cefnogi, a Llanelwy, wedi cefnogi y llyfrgelloedd yn barod. Da ni'n rhan o bartneriaeth. Mae Cyngor Tre Rhydlan, mae Dinas Llanelwy wedi rhoi arian am blynyddoedd tuag at cadw'r llyfrgelloedd yma yn agored. Roedd yna fygythiad bod y ddwy llyfrgell yna yn gorfod cau yn y ddiweddar yma, y blynyddoedd yn ôl. A ni fel Cynghora Tre a Dinas ddari cadw'n yn agored. Ni chafwyd unrhyw drafodaeth. Ni chafwyd unrhyw drafodaeth cyn bod hyn o flaen y cabinet. Ni chafwyd unrhyw drafodaeth gyda Cyngor Dinas Llanelwy na Cyngor Tre Rhydlan o flaen hyn. Pam? Pam ddari nhw ddim dod ni'n rhan o bartneriaeth i gadw'r llyfrgelloedd yn agored. Pam na wnaethoch chi ddod ata ni i siarad am hyn? Dwi'n ddim yn deall pam. Rwan, ydych chi'n obeithio byddwn ni'n dal i gefnogi y ddwy lyfrgell yna. Ydych chi'n gobeithio. Felly dwi'n gofyn i chi, pam na wnaethoch chi ddim ymgynghori hefo'r ddwy lyfrgell yna o flaen llaw cyn bod chi'n dod i'r penderfyniad yma. Mae diserth, er enghraifft, mae Bodelwyddan, ardaloedd gwledig, eisiau dod i mewn i'r llyfrgelloedd yma. Ac os ydych chi'n torri'r oriau, pryd mae'r rheini'n gallu cael y bysys i mewn i Gorwen, er enghraifft. Pryd maen nhw'n gallu dod mewn i Gorwen? Sut maen nhw'n gallu dod i mewn i'r peth yma? A dwi yn gofyn i chi ail edrych ar hyn, bod chi wedi gwneud eich gwaith ymchwil mwy triogl, os gwelwch yn dda, yn y cabinet yn hyn o beth. Felly byddai'n cynnig bod chi yn edrych ar hyn eto, bobl y cabinet. Os gwelwch yn dda. Diolch yn fawr iawn i chi.
Diolch Arwel. I class myself as a fair chairman. Could we please not shout and clap if possible? If you don't mind, thank you. Thank you. If you do it again, I'm going to ask you to leave, but thank you. Liz.
Just a point about consultation with Rhuddlan and St Asaph councils. I met with the mayor and the deputy mayor and the clerk of Rhuddlan Town Council, and also with the mayor and deputy mayor of St Asaph Council. I did meet with them during the consultation period, and you'll see the response that they submitted as part of the official consultation as well. So that did happen before the proposal came to Cabinet, and I am still in discussion with them, and in fact we're visiting Rhuddlan Town Council this evening as well. So we have great partnerships with the Town Council. Rhuddlan Town Council are exemplary in how they consider the library a vital part of the community, and also look for ways of expanding usage of the library. Again, as just a point of fact, we will never be charging people to use library services. That's never going to be part of of any model. But because of the core funding that we've got, we've been able to be very generous in throwing open our library doors for other services, other groups, community groups, charities, businesses, etc. And have a policy whereby we haven't charged for people that aren't businesses to be able to use libraries, and that's the charging policy that we will have to review going forward. So when we talk about charging people to use the libraries, I'm talking about the groups that come to use libraries. And outside opening hours in particular, obviously we need to cover our costs, but buildings are there, you know, they're well maintained, they work well, and I'd like to see them being used more than they currently are, both within opening hours and also outside opening hours. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Arrow wants to come back. So.
Liz, diolch yn fawr iawn. So you're saying to me that when the libraries are not open, people outside different communities can come into the library free of charge?
No, and what I'm saying is that if people want to use the library for, say, a Welsh Conversations class or something like that, if they want to use the library outside library opening hours to do that, then yes, we can arrange to do that, and we are already doing that in some places. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. So the groups, we wouldn't be having libraries open outside opening hours.
Okay.
For library services.
I edrych ar looking at Rhuddlan and St Asaph again. Obviously, each library costs a certain amount of money to run. Now, are you thinking, because St Asaph and us do give money towards running of that two libraries, is it fair that you want to cut 40% on the amount that those two give towards the library? Is it fair? Did you cut 40% on the £12,000 yearly we give in? Or did you just cut the rest for running the library? What's your proposal?
Okay, first of all, just as a matter of clarity, it's not 40%. It's less than that for St Asaph and for Rhuddlan libraries. But that, you know, it's just a percentage. What we did was we looked at our current opening hours, and we looked at reducing those opening hours. The original model that we consulted on, we discussed that with staff and with stakeholders, and we've come up with the revised model. The contribution, the welcome contribution from Rhuddlan and St Asaph has been £12,000 over a number of years. Obviously, that's covered less and less of our costs as the years have gone on. But to be honest, we've accounted for them continuing to make that £12,000 contribution. And you know, very much hope they do. If they don't, we'll have to reduce those opening hours, because that's what happened in the first place. As you say, when they first started making a contribution, it was to reduce the reduction of opening hours, to maximise opening hours. So if the money does get taken away, we will have to reduce those hours in those libraries.
Diolch Liz, a diolch ar Wil. Emrys, ti eisiau dod nôl am...
Ia, diolch yn fawr. Sori, dwi'n gwybod bod chi eisiau gyrru drafodaeth yn ei blaen, ond mae'n arbennig mod i'n mynd i ailadrodd yr hyn sydd wedi cael ei ddeud eisoes o ran ochr trefniadaeth o'r gwaith o redeg yr gwasanaethau ac adeiladau ag ati. Mae Liz wedi gwneud i'n glir na fydd codi tâl am ddefnyddio adnoddau. Mae'n bwysig bod hynny yn cyrraedd bobl yn glir. Mi fydd y grwpiau sydd yn llawer iawn yn wirfoddol yn dal i allu defnyddio'r llyfrgell. Efallai ddim ar yr union yr un amseroedd ag ydi arfer, ond pe mae'r llyfrgell ar gau, mi fydd y dysau dal ar agor i'r grwpiau hynny sydd ddim yn fusnesau, mae'n bwysig dweud hynny, i gael y gwasanaeth am ddim. Mae yna gyfeiriad wedi, achos mae'r ambell i fusnes ariannol yn mynd yn defnyddio'r banciau hefyd, a dwi'n cymryd bod yna godi tâl ar heini. O ran llyfrgell Llanelwy a Rhuddlan, wel mi fydda unau hefyd yn dod i'r cyfarfod yn cyfnodau Rhuddlan heno, ac yn gobeithio fyddwn ni'n gallu dod i ddeall yn union sut fydd y trefniant yn gweithio wedi i benderfyniad gael ei basio os geithio i gadarnhau gan y cabinet maes o law. Diolch yn fawr.
Emrys. Moving Parley and then Brian. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair, for letting me come back again. I'm going to go back a little bit on the commitments, because we're talking about Rhuddlan and Syndasov contributing. Can I ask, has the conversation been had with any of the other library services of whether they would want to contribute towards putting something towards keeping their libraries open? Because if not, why not? Because we're at the last minute now. We've been discussing this for a long time. Because town and community councils, I've been in meetings, and it's the time that precepts have just been set now. So if they felt that they strongly needed to put money towards the library, it would have been something they could have considered while they're setting their precept, just to up their little bit of the job there. So if you haven't asked, I'd want to know why you haven't asked them, because it would have been an important question to see if we could have had a bit more money. And the same with the wind farms as well. Have we asked them? I know it might be a little bit late getting it, but asking them, would it be a possibility? Could we, if we put an application in a creative way to try and get some money to help keep the libraries going, would we be eligible for funding? And then you could actually then sort of put that in your sort of guesstimated budget, which is what you've got at the moment with redundancies and everything. You could put it in your guesstimated budget, saying the wind farm might give us 200,000. The Gwyntamore might give us another 200,000 towards the library. So then you've got 400,000 maybe. That might maybe be able to leave the system as it is. And possibly if you then had a little bit from Denbighshire, from Denby, Corwen, Llandernach might contribute. The village ones might give a little bit in the MAGS areas towards it. A small contribution from everybody might have made it a strong case. If it hasn't been asked, I'd really want to know why we haven't been proactive in asking these people before we're making this cuts now. Thank you.
Can I come in?
Yes, if you think it's...
Yeah, following on from that question from Mervyn there, I'll apologise if I heard you wrongly. Did you say you didn't use the word negotiate, but you've negotiated with Rhuddlan to have longer opening hours? You made some comment about longer opening hours for Rhuddlan, and I think you mentioned St. Asaph.
Yeah, no, sorry, that was a misunderstanding. Yes, it was when many years ago, when there was a proposed change in models of library services, there was a proposal around certain opening hours for St Asaph and Rhuddlan, and that's where those two councils stepped in.
So there's been no conversations as of today that Rhuddlan will be open longer because they're contributing monies as opposed to Rhyl.
The proposal is as in the papers. The proposal is as in the papers, but I'm continuing the dialogue with them. Yeah, Tony wanted to come in as well on that.
Yeah, thanks, Liz. Yeah, just on that issue. I mean, I suppose there's a couple of things I'd probably say. One is that the proposal has obviously been something that's been kind of common knowledge, public knowledge for quite a long time now. We did, the service did write to the town and community councils at the time of the consultation, and we did have responses, Liz, from the town for quite a lot of the town and community councils. So they were certainly aware of the proposal, and although we had representation from some of the town councils, we didn't get any offers of any contributions to enable us to keep those libraries open for longer.
That question, was it in the consultation? Was it asked? Did lead members and yeah, was it a question that was asked? It was a consultation. I read the consultation. I fed back in it myself, but I don't think there was anywhere in that consultation where I saw that they were had an asking for it. And you know, we've got officers in Denbighshire, and we've got lead members, and I think that could have been something that could have been a conversation had with them, because it wasn't what was asked of the consultation. Does anybody want to put any money in the hat?
I was just going to come to that, to be honest. The second part of my answer was going to be, it's quite difficult timing-wise at the moment, because we all know, as we've discussed at great length, you know, collectively, that there are going to be lots of things that the council is going to have to disinvest from over the next year. We know what some of them are, or we know what the proposals for some of them are, one of them being the libraries. There are others that were already being discussed. There are others that we're not really clear what they will be yet. So there could be lots of things potentially that town or community councils may want to consider making a contribution towards, because for them locally that is a really important issue. So there is a conversation planned with all the town and community councils around the collective kind of total of the things that the council is going to have to invest less in, and the conversation will be around whether those town and community councils want to contribute to any of those things. The timing with this is really difficult, because if we were to say, I think, to the libraries at that point in time, well, you know, would you like to contribute to this? And then in a few months' time, there are a string of other proposals that come forward. I think that town and community councils might say to us, well, why didn't you tell us about those things at the time? Actually, those things for us may be more important than the library service. So we may have wanted to invest in the other things instead. So there's a really difficult timing thing in relation to that, the specific question for asking people for contributions. But as I've said, it was clearly very open and common knowledge to all the town and community councils what the proposal was, and we wrote to them and they responded as part of the consultation. So I think there was probably ample opportunity for the town councils to put forward a proposal if they felt that they wanted to do so, even if we didn't ask the specific question of them. But we will be having that conversation with them about this and lots of other things. And as Emrys has said, you know, he's setting up a working group with members to look at the way forward in future and potential opportunities.
I've got 6 speakers. Jeanette, I have got you there, so you are in.
Any thoughts on the wind farm again? Just, you know, how would we approach that one?
They won't fund council operations. No, they won't fund the council for council operations.
Moving on outside the group now, if everybody in the group's finished. The first that was Bobby Feely, then Anne, then Hugh Hildridge. I have got David, Janet, and Peter Scott after. So I've got you down, okay.
Thank you, Chair. I was getting a bit worried because I have to leave by 11:45. So thank you for letting me speak. The libraries are the beating hearts of the communities they serve. trusted, neutral places where everyone is welcome, regardless of their age, background, or financial circumstances. That's from our strategy on libraries, and I think that we can all agree with that. And Tony, I think it was Tony, mentioned social care. They do so much to contribute to the social care and the needs of the vulnerable. It's very sad that they're under threat. Can I just remind everyone that this decision is a cabinet decision, so it will be taken by the 9 members of the cabinet, even though there are 48 of us altogether. I certainly agree that the situation in with Alwell, that the situation in Rhuddlan and St Asaph seems to be rather unfair, as they do contribute and help financially. We've been out to consultation, and I admit to being not the biggest fan of consultations because they don't produce many responses, but in this case they did produce a really good response, 4,500 upwards in the main against the cuts. 50% of residents in Denbighshire do use the library services in some way. Unison have written an excellent letter against the cuts, including giving some ideas as to what we could do instead of cutting. At least 40% of the backbench councillors, some of us are here today, are against these cuts. Even the cabinet members said they don't want to cut this service. All of them at the cabinet meeting, you know, it was heartfelt, they said, and I truly believe that was true. I appreciate, Liz over there, that Denbighshire are facing the largest funding gap in their 25-year history. But in targeting the library service, you have picked on a small dynamic service that punches way above its weight, as I've said before, and a 40% cut will destroy and decimate this service. I disagree with the lead member's view. We usually support each other, but in this case, I disagree that it will come back. I don't think it will ever come back and be the same. So I would like to plead with every member of this Community Scrutiny Committee to vote to send this decision back to Cabinet for further consideration and discussion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Bobby. Next is Anne Davis, please.
Diolch yn fawr, Mr. Cadeirydd. I would like to go down the practical route here of the reduced close into Rhuddlan libraries, and I'd like to question how much importance has been paid to the Wellbeing Act 2015. I personally feel that this should be re-looked at. Rhuddlan, for example, has the highest number of residents over 80. Some years ago, the Health Board and Denbighshire decided a different model of care for our residents, looking after them in their own homes and in the community. Rhuddlan Library staff, the amazing staff we've got there, they do contribute greatly towards supporting our more vulnerable residents. For example, they go in there and pay the bills. Some, unbelievably, don't have bank accounts. Attendance allowance forms. This support, by obtaining that, the residents are able to have more care in the home and keeping them out of residential care. Blue badge forms, 14-page application. Library staff are helping the residents to complete these very difficult forms. And I feel that by reducing the hours, it's compromising the well-being of our residents, which will result more than They will need more care in the home, possibly residential care, hospital visits, GP visits, etc. Now, every summer, all our libraries run a reading challenge. Now, in Rhuddlan alone, over 100 children take part in this, and this contributes to their education moving forward. This summer, I introduced a family of 5 to Rhuddlan Library, and they were from Syria. Now, the delight on those children's faces when they walked into the library, you know, was quite touching, really. And the library staff have helped support them with language and different sort of thing. The support they give the communities is it recognised by all the officers, members, cabinet members? I feel like reducing the opening hours to our residents is a great injustice to them, and it will come back and bite us. They will need more care in lots of different ways.
Diolch Anne, diolch yn fawr, thank you. Hugh Hildridge Roberts, please. Yes.
Ga i ymateb i'r Bobby Fieldy ac Ann Davies. I ddechrau, diolch Bobby a diolch Ann am ddod ymlaen. Beating heart of the community, ydyn ni. A mi fydd y galon yna yn parhau i giro hefyd. Efallai bydd rhaid newid, bydd ambell i grŵp yn gorfod newid y dyddiad os oes rhaid, dim ond os y wirioneddol rhaid, ond fel di dweud eisoes, mi fydd y llyfrgell yr adeilad ar gael ar gyfer gweithgareddau o dan gofal cymdeithasol y lle oedd Bobby yn pwysleisio arno, ac hefyd mi fydd o'r lle mae Ann yn sôn hefyd am ofal cymdeithasol, a hefyd lle mae'r rhai hun yn defnyddio i fynd yno i dalu biliau ac ati, mi fydd hynny yn gallu parhau. Iawn, efallai fydd rhaid mynd i dalu'r bil a ddiwrnod gwahanol, ac os di hynny'n bosib, mi fydd y broblem wedi mynd. Os na fydd yn bosib, dwi'n ffyddiog iawn y bydd y sir yn siarad gyda'r unigolion yma mwyn sicrhau bod yna gyfnodau ar gael i bobl fynd i mewn i wneud yr gwaith siop un alwad hefyd. Diolch.
Tony just wants to come in before we go to Hugh, if it's okay. Thanks, Hugh.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to highlight that obviously there was a wellbeing impact assessment undertaken on the proposal before it went to Cabinet. So, of course, that was considered by Cabinet as part of the deliberations and decision making. And, of course, everybody cares about this. I just wanted to make that really, really clear. So officers care, members care, Cabinet care. So, and we understand all of the issues that are being raised today. And I don't want to speak on behalf of Cabinet, but clearly officers hold those same views, and Cabinet did consider the wellbeing impact assessment and the impact that this will have when they made the decision. But Emrys is right, we're not closing libraries, and all of the services that libraries provide now will still be provided in future. The library service just won't be open for as often as it is currently. So that is going to be less convenient for some people, but it's not completely taking those services and that support away. But of course, that was considered and it was acknowledged, and everybody cares about this. So thank you, Chair.
Diolch, sydyn iawn, very quickly. What Tony says is absolutely correct. You know, the Cabinet were aware of the wellbeing impact, and it is negative. It's the position that we're in. You know, we're facing a financial hole. There's going to be lots of negative wellbeing impact assessments that we're going to have to look at and make decisions regarding, even though we don't want to. That's just the position that we've been put in.
Diolch, Gwyneth. Hugh Hildridge Roberts.
Thank you. For those of you who know me, I don't keep still very long, and I get frustrated, and I have been quite frustrated in this debate. So I'm going to address a couple of things which has been said before I actually want to convey what I said. I had to Google a word to see another word for it, because what I've heard is a little bit of poppycock, really. Because, Tony, you're saying about timing, right? This this proposal has been on the table for a long time. You've known it was coming. You have had timing to talk to councils, rural councils. You've had timing to look at other options. That has not been done. For me, that has not been done. Emrys Bach, you keep on saying that we can open the library out of hours. We've had to get rid of Ruthin Town Hall off our books because it was too expensive to open out of hours, to get a caretaker to open, to the caretaker to close. But we need to look at it. And to the belief that this library service is going to come back and increase. Seriously, we're all realistic. And Tony, you said 22% of the cut towards libraries. Give me another department that's going to have a bigger cut. Because I don't see it, because this has been done in complete isolation. I understand, and what I'm going to say, I totally understand these cuts need to be made. And I don't envy the two lead members of Plaid Cymru, which are the minority party of the cabinet, and you're fronting this, which is probably the biggest public impact, and which will be on the doorsteps in the next election. It'll be Plaid Cymru that have closed libraries. That will be the message that will be out there. So I'm just saying, Arwel. So Gwyneth said, confidence in the cabinet is why the calling was made, that you made the right call. That's what we're here to discuss today. Yeah. And I'm going to quote some of the officers and some of the lead members in what they've said in their introduction. Gwyneth said, we're looking for a way back. That's what you said, and it's great that we are. But we should have a plan already before we look for a way back. I think that's really important because we don't have a backup plan. We haven't sat down with Denbighshire Leisure and said, can you put Costas in every library and make a cafe or make something different? We haven't looked at that commercial element. It's just been a tick box. Let's get libraries saving, tick the box, move on. The word isolation is what this is about. This is complete isolation. Other members have talked about knock-on effect on elderly, vulnerable, children's education, Welsh language, we can go on. The impact assessment is negative, as Gwyneth says, but the work around it to make it positive hasn't been tried. There is an area of this that we can make so positive. We can turn this into something bigger, something like we did with the music service in cutting the cloth, when we got a better music service, even though we had to make a cut. But we're tunnel vision. Right? I mean, Gwyneth also said decision is not of no advantage to anyone. But why isn't the discussion of the cabinet around the table is what advantages can we make of these situations we're in and make it better? Tony Ward says, none of us like this. Right? Solutions, not problems. But we're not having solutions. We've got the problem that we need to save and we're ticking a box. Gwyneth says she's not happy. Emrys Wyn, not comfortable. No choice. We all have choices. We do have choices. You could make a cut in a different part of the council, but because this has been done in isolation, that's not on the table. You know, tell me, other than maybe swimming pools and education, what other service in the council has this number of service users? You know, in Ruthin alone, it's nearly 40,000 people use the library. So there's no piece of work being done about the actual usage by residents of services before judging what the cuts are. And I'll come back, for example, and I know Gwyneth will tell me it's capital, not revenue, but you know, as a cabinet, you made a decision to spend 2.2 million on moving the archives into Flintshire. 450 odd people a year use the archives. When you do the maths on the library, it's massive. It's thousands. I think Rail's 40,000, 45,000. I can't remember. So what I'm saying is about the confidence in the cabinet decision. When I sat at cabinet, and the line I kept on hearing from the leader over and over again is, we've got to get it over the line. I don't like that language. I sympathise with the two lead members having to bring this in front of us, but I do not believe an appraisal of all options. You know, Liz says we can't have wind farm money in the council. No, but you could put social enterprises in the libraries and they could run them, and we could fund them that way. But that hasn't been looked at. So what I'm saying is, I urge as a committee that you send this back to cabinet with a proposal that comes with full understanding that we need to make the savings, but looking at other ways in which we can either opportunity, not negativity. And for some of you, you know, if you were interviewing a head of service and you looked at a CV, and as I sat on some interviews of heads of service and directors over the last few years, I would always take it a negative that if they were boasting that they had 10 services that they closed or 10 libraries that they closed, what I would look for is the entrepreneurship of how they've increased the income of the opportunity for the council. And that's what I absolutely feel that needs to be done. And it needs to be done not in isolation, but as a complete whole picture, a whole council approach. And that's why I think it's premature to take this decision now. And I fully understand you've got to make savings. I'm not knocking that in any shape or form, but I just think we need to have an appraisal of other options and how the impact assessment can look more positive. And then I'm going to stop on my rant now, but as a local member, Emrys will be aware, we've lost Clogau Gold Shop in Ruthin in the last week. You know, footfall are down in our towns. We take libraries down 40%, some more in some cases. If you live in Llandegla, you've got no bus and not a hope in hell of getting to a library if you can't drive. That's the reality now. So I honestly think that for me, that we need to look, and I just want to make sure as a group, the independent group have asked me to convey that we do not support the 40% reduction in libraries in any shape or form, but we need to look at another way forward. Diolch.
Okay, thank you. I think there's a good statement. Questions? Do you want to answer a couple of questions or statements?
If it's
Chris
okay,
has got his hand up as well.
if it's okay, just one or two things. And obviously, Hugh, you know, has listed a range of things there, and some of those were directed towards me, so I feel as though I should respond in some way. I would disagree that this is without trying to wanting to expand this into a wider debate about the entire budget. But I disagree that this is being done in isolation. You know, this is one idea of many that have been developed as major savings ideas to tackle the overall £25 million pressure. So it's not being done in isolation. It's just that each decision has to be made on its own merit, doesn't it? So that's why we're talking about this today in isolation. There are other services, I think, that are used by as many people across the council. The waste service, for example, is used by every household in the county. There's a project ongoing there to fundamentally change the way we do the waste service, and that's going to make it a cheaper service than the one we currently have. That's used by everybody. Highways are used by everybody, and we've recently had the discussion about highways capital, and some members will be aware of that as well. And the proposal there is to reduce that by more than 22%. So I don't agree with everything that Hugh says, although he's made some really valid points. But nobody's boasting about this, and nobody would ever be wanting to do that. But some of the things that Hugh mentioned, and I think Hugh mentioned, there's a couple of services. The music service, for example, CCTV was another one in the past, where they were reshaped and funded in a different way. But the decisions were made to cut the council funding to those services before those things were put in place. So the council made the decision to remove the funding, and then a new thing emerged, which meant that the music service, and I think it's widely regarded to be a better service than the one we had before, even though the council now doesn't pay for it. So sometimes the decision has to be made in order for something else to come to the fore in terms of a replacement or something to do something slightly differently. But I totally sympathise with a lot of the points you're making, Hugh, and I certainly wouldn't disagree. None of us like it. Nobody likes it. Everybody will acknowledge that it will have an impact. But the danger of not making these decisions, this being one example, and spending a lot more time than looking at alternatives without doing it, is that we simply run out of time to set a budget. But Liz probably has more to say on that than I do, being the the head of finance and Gwyneth as the lead member for finance, but I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Ernest, ti eisiau dod nôl yn sydyn?
Sydyn iawn.
Dwi eisiau mynd dros hen bethau.
That's just, tafod yn y moch, dwi'n wedi cael yng ngalw'n Emrys bach ers sawl blwyddyn. Ia, ac sa waith am hynny, mi roi si her i chdi yn ddiwedd y cabinet, a nes i roed her i mi, di meddwl, o ran sicrhau cael yr oriau yma nôl ac ail agor. Fi'n ffyddiog o gallwn i wneud. A dyna pam nes i dderbyn dy her di adeg hynny, a dwi'n parhau i dderbyn yr her. Efallai bydd o'n wahanol, ond yn sicr bydd ennill oriau nôl yn rhan o y mantra fi efo'r grŵp yma fydd yn cael ei sefydlu yn y dyfodol. Ac mi wneith y grŵp edrych ar wahanol ddulliau o fedru defnyddio'r llyfrgelloedd hefyd. Dyna pam di mynd i cael y grŵp, achos dwi ddim yn hapus efo'r gorfod wneud y cynnig yma, dwi wedi gwneud hynny'n glir, sy'n neb o'r cabinet yn hapus am wneud o, dyn ni'n gorfod i wneud o, a dyn ni eisiau cael o'i weithio.
Gwyneth, rei sydyn.
Yeah, diolch yn fawr, thank you. I just want to mention, because you mentioned the archives, and Tony will tell you this, I really struggled against that one, didn't I? And I got people from the Welsh government up here and everything like that, because I didn't want to spend that money. And you know, basically, we are in a situation where we have to. So it's not always so easy as to say, well, we cannot spend that, and then we'll, you know, the archives was a very specific case, and that's the problem with lots of things. Yeah.
Diolch, right, that's it now. I've got 3 speakers. Right, very quick. No, here we're not. No, I'm not. I've got 3 speakers and time's going on. I've got David, Jeanette, Jamelyn, Jones, is it? And Peter Scott. So have all them together. Yeah, if they come up. Di, can you come up after? Sorry, yeah, no, sorry, David Williams. No, David Williams, Janet after, and then Peter Scott, and then Di, we'll have you after. Sorry, David. We'll take these all together. Yeah.
Diolch, Mr. Cadeirydd. I'd like to start by asking 1 or 2 questions to Liz. Thomas, please. Liz, just say again, please. Is it 24.5 million shortfall we anticipate? Yeah. Now you'll be quicker at maths than me. You've probably got a calculator. I've just done it on mental arithmetic. I think the saving of the libraries, even if you put it at 360, does that equate to about 1.5% of the budget? I think. Well, let's just assume it does. You check it, please, Liz. I honestly cannot see the rationale between even looking at this. For a start, we are looking at it in isolation. That's the other one I wanted to ask you, Liz. When do you have to prepare your, sorry to interrupt your calculations, but when do you have to have prepare a budget by? What timescale?
The budget proposals are going to the next cabinet meeting, which is on the 23rd of January. So the reports, I've signed it off and sent it yesterday. The book report has gone.
Besides the library issue, can I ask you how many heads of services have presented their reports for scrutiny so that we can look at everything rather than just libraries in isolation? Can I ask you that one?
So in terms of the savings proposals that are included within that, how many of those have gone through scrutiny? Is that the question? Yeah. Just to, yeah, okay.
We're making decisions, although Tony disagrees, it is in isolation because we haven't got, as far as I'm aware, there was talk of it coming through in March, that there wouldn't be reports ready until March. Well, how on earth can a council make rational decisions about where to make cuts and how deep they should be when we're only looking at one option, libraries, which is a drop in the ocean compared to, I think it is 1.5%, a drop in the, sorry, if I can just continue, a drop in the ocean compared to what we need to save. So I just fail to see how anyone can look at this in all seriousness, because I tell you what, you might not like to hear it, and I don't mean it in a disparaging way, but this is regarded as a joke by a lot of people with financial acumen. You seriously telling me that all this hoo-ha and disruption to save £330,000 out of a budget deficit of 24.5, and you're going to impact the most vulnerable members of society that this cabinet, this Labour socialist cabinet, purports to support the most vulnerable members, going to impact them more than any other group. And I don't know what planet you're on. You're looking at saving 330,000, which is nothing, and all the hoo-ha and grief it's causing, it's beyond me. I'm sorry. Was I right in those calculations?
Thank you, David.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Gwyneth?
Yeah, I just make the point that lots of the savings that we're looking at are around this level, or even maybe smaller. They all add up. That's the point, that we don't have the saving which is going to cover.
Yeah, it's
everything.
330,000.
We're looking at some things that are saving us 20,000 or 40,000.
Well, we don't know about them, do we? We don't know about them.
Let them answer. You've had
We're
your,
looking,
you've had
you
your
know,
piece.
you have been informed about the savings plans. The non-strategic savings specifically are made up of lots of little savings that department heads and heads of services are deciding on. So, you know, it's not, compared to lots of them, this is a fairly large saving. And Liz is nodding there, you know. So it's not insignificant, and they all add up, and that's how we're going to have to deal with it. And yes, it impacts the most vulnerable. We know that. But we're in this position because, as a local authority, we're not being funded correctly by a long way.
Before you come back, I just ask Gary to come in. He's been biting my heels.
Well, I just would make the point that there have been a series of budget workshops that information has been provided to members about both the major savings and where those have been through a cabinet CET process. There's been a meeting arranged for members to be able to ask questions about those things. And at Denby Town Hall, there was a budget workshop where each of the heads of service in turn came to explain to members what the non-strategic savings that have been grouped together, because there are lots of little things from £2,000 here to £30,000 there, to explain to members the sorts of things that they were going to be doing. Many of those decisions are decisions which are wholly within the delegated authority of those officers to make, because they have to manage their budget. So I would just, with respect, say it's not correct to say that members don't know about the other savings that are being made, and it's not correct to say that this is a saving that's being made in isolation. Because of the nature of decision making that is applied to local authorities by law, the council sets the budget, but the individual measures, many of them are executive decisions which the law says cabinet must make. So when people say it's only being made by X number of cabinet members and not the whole council, that's because the law says it has to be made by that body, because those are the people who have the executive function and the executive responsibility. So I think I just wanted to clarify a couple of those things, because I think otherwise we're in danger of getting carried away with this is a single thing that nobody knows about anything else, because that's not correct. Members have had lots of information about other things, and we've got processes that we're taking them through. This is a decision that's required to be made. If it's to be made, it's required to be made by cabinet, and scrutiny is entitled to call that decision in, and that's what we're doing. So that's why you're talking about libraries today.
Do you want to come back, David? Or?
Very quickly, I fully accept what you've said, Gary. But I would say to this cabinet, we know there's going to be massive cuts everywhere, but as the party of the people, Labour and Plaid, why not just hold this up as a beacon of light? We're saving libraries. There will be no cuts to libraries because it's the most vulnerable members of society. So that is one saving grace in all the carnage that is going to ensue. And maybe that might just save you a few votes. I don't know, you know, in the future elections, it might just win some votes.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Yeah. Jeanette, thank you for being so patient.
Nice. It's a pleasure. Thank you for letting me speak. I'll cut it short because Bobby and Hugh and David have all touched on what I was going to say anyway. But I'm going to bring it down to being a councillor now and justifying yourself as your local councillors. What I'm asked repeatedly is, how can we justify cutting the main services to libraries, and yet you want to change the bins? I know you expect us to explain the ins and outs of it. But the majority of people in our wards, they don't see it like that. And it's very difficult to explain why we're going to cut library services and yet take all their bins away and give them new ones that they've never wanted anyway, a considerable amount of cost. You see, and I'm talking now as the general public, because these are the questions they ask us as a councillor. And it's very hard to justify saying, oh, well, you know, we're going to have savings in the future on the bin circulation. And they, I mean, in no uncertain terms, they tell me to get a life, and what the hell am I thinking about? Because we are going to be doing a considerable amount of moving of bins at a great deal of cost, and yet cutting library services. And I want probably, how can I explain that to the residents of my ward? It is very, very difficult to justify you spending a fortune on one thing that's really should have been left and on another one. So that's a different angle to it, Chair. And thank you for letting me speak. But I mean, I hope that realistically Cabinet will relook at this very important
2 words,
cut. Thank you, Chair. Very briefly, I mean, it's obviously 2 very different things, the library service and the bin proposal. But you know, we will be embarking very shortly on a big communications campaign around that. We're going around all the mags in the next month or so, and we've got meetings with town and community councils, and we'll be going out with a comms campaign to the public about the reasons why we're changing the waste collection service. And you know, we'll be explaining to people those reasons. It's for environmental benefits. One of the knock-on benefits for the council, though, is that the new service will be cheaper than the current one. So it also
not to them, though, Tony, not to the people.
It's to us, and we're paying for it, Jeanette.
Okay, right. Let's stop you there. Tony, could you have a word with Jeanette outside this meeting over bins? That'd be great. Thanks, Jeanette. Thank you. I've got my Peter Scott and then the vice chair. So, and then we're closing the debate, and then we'll have Brian Jones is going to sum up, and then we get Emrys sum up. But in the meantime, we're going to have Di in between, Di Morgan, to give us a bit of a speech as well. So, Peter, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I've turned up, so I might as well speak. I'm talking with me St Asaph City West County Council's hat on, not chair of the council hat. This is really just for a point of clarity, because I've heard most of what I was going to say has been said. But one for Arwell, the cut initially for the libraries was 50%. It went down at the last meeting to 40%. When we did the calculations with Liz for St Asaph, it's 33%. So we've had a little reduction at St Asaph. I'm still in negotiation with Liz, and I'll talk as much as I can. We did have a meeting with Liz, just to clarify again, at the beginning in the library with Liz and Colin and Jill, the clerk for the council. My own point really is, back in 2016, when we did a service level agreement with Denbighshire, that we would pay £12,000 a year to help with the cost of running the library. At that time, we thought everybody was doing it. In fact, we found out since that there was only us and Ridland that joined in with that goal. And to this day, having just paid January's payment, we've paid £84,000 as a council at St Asaph into keeping the library open at St Asaph, which we could have done a great deal in St Asaph with £84,000, I must admit. So it's disappointing that we've had to pay that and no one else has. I'm pleased that we've got it down to 33%, and I say I'm still in negotiations. If we hadn't have had these cuts right at the start, we wouldn't have been here talking about it, so we wouldn't have had to negotiate with anything. We could have just carried on as normal. And that's all I wanted to really to say. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Peter. What was the statement there? Karen, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to come back to Gary Williams when he mentioned that the councillors had had numerous, three, I think it is, budget workshop meetings, and you specifically mentioned the one that happened in Denby. I'd just like to say that by the time the officers had finished speaking, there was actually very little time for members to ask questions, and it was a point raised at the time. So that's number one. Number two, I have a question about, I know that you've explained about the voluntary redundancies and the compulsory redundancies. Well, what happens if there are no voluntary redundancies and staff don't want to be relocated? You will be faced then with compulsory redundancies, won't you? Which come at a higher cost. Am I right there? Is that correct?
I think I've already explained it. The voluntary scheme and a compulsory proposal are different things. In respect of the library proposal, that's a proposal that's already in consultation with staff, and therefore, if people don't volunteer and there are not enough volunteers and compulsory redundancies have to be made, then they would follow the compulsory redundancy policy. The point that's been made is that efforts will be made by the council to try and redeploy as many of those people as possible. So nobody can sit here and tell you there will be X number of compulsory or voluntary redundancies within that service, because we just don't know. But people who are already in a consultation in respect of a proposal would be entitled to compensation under the compulsory scheme.
So it's a definite button, a maybe then, really, at the moment.
Well, to be fair, Karen, I think I can do the explanation again, but as Liz pointed out, you consult on proposals. You do not know at the outset of those proposals how many compulsory redundancies will need to be made. And as she explained, the cost of redundancy is a range between 0 and an amount that's been put in the report. So it is if and but it's clear that the saving that would be made each and every year, and the redundancy cost would be a one-off payment, which Liz did explain previously. So in terms of the redundancy things, I think it's relatively clear. There will be a 40%, if the proposal is upheld, a 40% reduction in the opening hours, which will have a reduction in the hours of staff required to be employed to deliver the service in those hours. There may or may not be compulsory redundancies. It depends on how the proposal consultation goes and what, if any, opportunities there are to redeploy people. In terms of the budget workshop, I didn't comment on the amount of time that people had to ask questions. The point I was making was that people were saying that this was being considered in isolation without people knowing what other things were being considered, when it's clear there has been a workshop and heads of service have explained to members those are the things that are being considered. I just didn't want anybody to get the impression that this was the only thing being considered, that nobody knew anything about any of the other savings, because that's not correct.
Right. Stop that debate there now and move on to Di Morgan. Di, thank you for being patient with us, and it's really nice to see the union here today, and we welcome outside people to come to the meetings to talk. It's really important what we do, and members of the public. Thank you, Di.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair, for allowing me to speak. And it seems clear, Unison's put in two submissions, a detailed one at the time of the consultation and the one today. And it's clear from the words of the members and officers that that's been considered in all of the debates that's happened. So I'm very pleased that we've had that opportunity. Particularly because as impressive as it would be if I was a genius and I'd come up with all of this myself, the reality was even more impressive is that the library staff themselves have come up with these proposals. They're tremendously dedicated. They're absolutely committed to the service. They're tremendously talented, skilled and intelligent part of our workforce. And it would be an absolute tragedy if we were to lose any single one of them. And that's one of the key things that needs to be said is that managers are working to minimise redundancies, as has been said. That's correct. But nevertheless, that doesn't mean that they'll be able to reduce that to 0. So I think it is realistic. We'll be facing some compulsory redundancy. But beyond that, it's much worse, because we've got the situation that people who will be facing a cut in hours, not being said that they're being made redundant, just facing a cut in hours, it will bring them into poverty. It bring them to a situation where continuing to work for the council is no longer a viable economic
possibility for those individuals. And that is our a huge concern, that those staff then, as challenged as they are lost, and the connections that they have in the community are lost with that. When cuts proposals for libraries are generally considered, have been considered elsewhere in the country, one of the first responses is for a counter proposal to begin to expand the role of libraries as community hubs, etc. But let's be clear, in Denbighshire, that's already taken place. So we've already gone through that process. This is not the beginning of the cut to the library. This is one of a further down the line. And by being community hubs as they are, the libraries play a massive role as the front of house of the council for all sorts of internal services. Some examples have been made, social services, etc., but it's massive. It's a whole range of services, and it's a whole range of government, national government services, as well as those at the local level. For those reasons, I think that the fact that the libraries are up for a cut it's something that's that we would oppose. That doesn't mean we haven't considered what are the possibilities to try and assist in the difficult situation that we face, which I too blame on the overall funding from UK government. We've considered this. One of the things that's been debated is in relation to the role that town and community councils might play. And what I have to say is that it is correct that it should be considered alongside the wider range of cuts, and we should approach the town community councils to see how they can help us with this situation. But at the moment, we're saying we're going to take the decision on the libraries outside and separate from that process. And that's problematic because it deserves to be considered alongside the other proposals. The other thing about grants have been mentioned. One of the models that had been mentioned was about the possibility of social enterprises operating within our library infrastructure, and that social enterprises do have access to grants that the council do not. And that was the proposal made by Hugh, and that's an important one to consider. But actually, there's something much more significant, immediate, and beyond that we also need to consider. And what that is that the council already has many services which are grant funded and are not part of the core funding of the council, that already operate as council services that are grant funded. We have an opportunity, if we consider the libraries alongside and the infrastructure that they have and what they have to offer, alongside our property review which is taking place, we have the opportunity to consider, can we operate some of our existing grant-funded, externally funding services through the library infrastructure, and therefore legitimately use that funding as a proposal to fund some of the overhead or running costs or other costs that the library faces, and therefore mitigate the situation as it stands. The example that's already taken place where that's the case is work in Denbighshire, which operates employability services funded by Welsh Government Grant Communities for Work and funded by the UK Government Grant Shared Prosperity Fund, operates from Real Library and contributes to the running costs of Real Library because it operates from that venue, and it utilises and interacts with those services. It utilises and interacts with libraries right across the county, not just Real Library, and the potential to expand the contribution from that grant, or those two grants, and from other grant-funded services that already exist in the council is there. And that, alongside the Town and Community Council proposals, are the things that need to be considered before this decision is made final. And those are the things that need to take place. And that's why the reference back, or the call in is correct, and why council cabinet needs to think once again about these proposals. Thank you.
Thank you, Di. Great statement. Thank you very much. Right, I'm going to adjourn the meeting now for 10 minutes, and then when we come back, Brian or Hugh, I'm not sure who's back online, one of you are going to sum up your side. Emrys, you're going to do the summing up on your side, and then we'll go to the group for recommendations. So 10-minute break. Thank you. the second half of this community scrutiny on libraries and one-stop shop. So we're coming to the summing up for the reasons of the call-in, and we've got Brian Jones, and then we'll have Emrys Wynne as a response as a cabinet member. And then we'll have some proposals off somebody, I take it. So, Brian, are you going to do the proposals after, are you? All right, okay. Yeah, fire away. Thank you.
Recovered. Right, thank you, Chair. First off, it's obviously the best scrutiny debate that I've sat in 6 years, which is good to see, and I agree with you. Even having the union rep with us as well puts a complete picture on it. In the summing up, I think it's quite clear from the atmosphere here in the chamber this morning and comments from round and about Denbighshire, nobody wants this cutback in the library services. It's absolutely crystal clear by a country mile. We're here because of the financial situation, which again it's been acknowledged that that's the case. I'd like to put a couple of points right though, because it was mentioned again, the dear old people in the UK government, the funding issues that we've got actually come from the woeful Welsh Government funding formula. And if you want an example of that, hang on a minute, am I going to have peace and quiet? And if you want an example of that, you know, they sent back £150 million to the UK Treasury. You know, that's woeful financial management, but I'll put that right. I think my young colleague from the union hinted at that as well. So I wanted to put that in as a point in the summary. So it's been a good debate, as I've already said. A lot of points have been covered, most of them all relevant in many respects, absolutely. And if we go to the paper at 3.1, as a committee here, we need to consider that we've looked at the appendices, etc. And then at 3.2, I'm going to make the proposal to the Cabinet that, or to send back from this committee, for this committee to agree or otherwise, that this scrutiny committee recommend to the Denbighshire Cabinet that they consider the calling points as recorded that are on the table this morning. Is that good enough, or do you want me to read them out? More detail? Well, actually, they are the calling points that are in the report, but if you want me to read them out, I'll read them out, yeah? Yeah.
Hang on.
Well,
Na I ddod at y tîm am munud, right? Na I gael Brian yn siarad wan, dod â chi wedyn. Cyfle siarad wedyn, okay.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So I'll start again then, that this scrutiny committee recommends to the Denbighshire Cabinet that they consider the calling points as recorded on the sheet of paper that I've got in front of me, and that they remove the libraries in Denbighshire totally from this cost-cutting exercise of the 2024-25 budget. So they totally rescind it, and it's not included in any budget calculation for this next financial year. So it goes out the window, and that includes any redundancies or anything of that nature. And then that they also consider and go through an appraisal of what can be done via the private sector, via grant funding streams, to find the finance, to put into the libraries, to make up this really small shortfall of 300+ K that's caused all this issue, and why we're here this morning, and what's upset the public to an unbelievable degree. Thousands of people just don't understand, and you can't expect them to understand the overall financial problems of the authority, which I've already said, I accept that, they're there, but to a lot of people, if the library's not open, they don't understand. They hear we had £241 million to spend in this current financial year, and how can you defend it, and how can you answer it to people that are not involved with the workings and the inner workings of an authority? Where's all that money gone? Yeah. But anyway, so hopefully you've got my recommendation that I'm putting before this scrutiny committee this morning, that we're going to hopefully take a vote on. I'd appreciate a recorded vote on it, please, Chair, so we know who's voting which way. That's my summary.
Okay, we'll just hold that for a second now. We'll go to Emrys now, but there's no more debate on this. No more debate at all. It's not a debate. It's not going back to fight back to each other. No more debate of anybody unless they've got another recommendation. Hold the recommendations. Emrys, you're summing up, and that's all we're doing now.
Iawn, diolch yn fawr iawn. Dwi am dynnu un frawddeg o'r hyn darllenes i ar y cynta. Yn y cynnig cynta mae'n sôn am lleihau oriau llyfrgelloedd 40% yn amrhiodol. Den ni ddim yn cytuno fod o'n amrhiodol. Yn sicr mae o'n ofid, mae'n destun gofid, ond sicr dydy o ddim yn amrhiodol o dan y sefyllfa den ni yno rwan. Den ni'n croesawu'r ddadl heddiw ac yn parchu'r pwyllgor craffu yma. Mae'n amlwg fod aelodau'n anhapus efo'r penderfyniad a rydym ni'n deall hynny ac yn wir yn cytuno. Mi gafodd y penderfyniad i'w wneud yn groes i'r graen. Dewis chi fel pwyllgor ydy i ofyn i'r cabinet i ail-edrych ar y penderfyniad. Dwi'n credu fod y cabinet yn hollol ymwybodol o'r dadleuon a wnaed heddiw wrth wneud y penderfyniad. Dwi'n gobeithio na fydd craffu yn cael ei ddefnyddio fel arf gwleidyddol i ddatgan anghytundeb efo penderfyniad. Ond yn hytrach, os ydych yn penderfynu'n gofyn i'r cabinet ail ymweld a'r penderfyniad eich bod yn gwneud hynny oherwydd eich bod yn credu bod gennych chi wybodaeth newydd na gafodd ei drafod gan y cabinet. Dyna'r symud up i fi.
Diolch, Emrys. Diolch. So we have had a proposer from Brian. Have we got any amendments? Mervyn Parry.
Amendments.
Sorry.
Second or an amendment.
Sorry.
Second.
James seconded. Okay. Mervyn, what did you want?
I appreciate where Brian's coming from, but I think probably if we throw that at the cabinet, it'll probably get thrown out straight away. And I'd like to be a little bit more proactive on that one and maybe take in what Emrys has said. So I'd like to recommend that we recommend to cabinet that they hold their decision on the cuts on the library for us to have a more of a fuller appraisal on running the library and looking at where we can get options of other external funding to come in to help run these libraries and keep the doors open, as we have discussed. I know that Liz said we can't fund councils, or the grants can't fund councils, but we can think outside the box and call things different names to get fundings in their social businesses or whatever. And I'd like to put a hold on the decision until there's more work done on whether we can get other fundings to help keep the libraries going. It's shown today how much of an important service it is to the public. That would be my recommendation, Chair.
Can I just, as monitoring officer, please just say, the council can't be applying for funding for things by calling them different things. That's essentially fraud. So can I just make that point?
Yeah,
I'm sure that's not what you meant.
That's not what I meant, Gary,
but I just want to make that clear. Thank you.
You're going off Mervyn's Bible. Yeah, please.
Okay. So we won't fudge the figures. It's I'd like to put a I'd like to ask the cabinet to delay the decision on cutting the library costs, the cuts, until they do some more exploratory work on other alternative funding that could be used by outside groups that use the library, that they might be able to apply for grants to help run the place. Thank you. Does that make sense? Agencies and whatever, so we can actually keep the doors open of the library with partnership funding. Thank you.
Over to Gary Williams. We've got two proposals so far, and we've got two seconders. Brian, are you going to withdraw yours, or what do you want to do? Or should we have a vote on Brian's? Do you want to vote on Brian? Yeah.
Yes, James Elson.
Okay, so you've effectively got a proposal made by Brian, seconded by James, and what you've essentially got is an amendment being proposed by Mervyn, which needs to be seconded by Arwell. Thank you. So that means now that if the original proposal is not withdrawn, then you need to decide whether or not you approve that the original be amended, and then you'd have to vote on the amendment. But you can't vote on both, if you like. So you've got a proposal from Brian, and you've got essentially what's an amendment from Mervyn.
Just let them have a little discussion there, what they're doing.
Sorry, Chair.
Can we just adjourn for, can we just adjourn for 2 minutes? Sorry, thank you. Adjourn 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. We have, Chair. We certainly have, yeah. From my proposal, I would like to retain the piece where I asked for the private sector and other grant stream funding avenues are investigated and appraised, whatever word you want. If you can add that into Councillor Mervyn Paddy's amendment, I'll be happy to concede and go to a vote on that.
You withdrawn your.
As long, yeah, and obviously I've had a chat.
I'm happy to take them in.
Yeah.
Without witness. You just need somebody can just read it back so we can get it fully understand whether it's.
I'm not putting words in anybody's mouth. This is what I think is a summary of what you're saying, is that the committee would ask Cabinet to postpone its decision on the library savings proposal until further exploratory work had been done to identify alternative funding sources available to the council or other partner bodies, whether in the private or public sector. Is that what you were saying?
And including any redundancies, please. No, all right then. Forget that.
Okay.
I second that.
Arwell seconds that.
Well, who's proposing it?
Mervyn Paddy.
Right. Okay.
Brian, pull back on this.
In that case, Chair, you've got a proposal. What I do think, I'll just check with 3M, but I do think that you need to give some reasons as to, that may be the recommendation, but you would need to identify reasons, because you would be going back to Cabinet if this is passed.
Yeah.
And you'd be giving them the reasons why you were asking for that.
I'm right in saying I will be going, and along with the 2 members who proposed it. Chair. Okay, yeah, so right, give me the reasons. Can you give me some reasons?
Yeah, I'll give the reasons. The reasons I'm putting this proposal is that I don't think we've investigated enough with the outside private bodies and with the town and community councils to see if we can give them a chance to see if they want to. It's been suggested, but I don't think it's been made strong enough. And I think that if we put a delay on it, we've got a chance to go back to ask outside bodies if we've got some sort of help to try and support the libraries.
Agreement.
Not up to me to be happy. They're your reasons.
The reason you've got that.
I've got the reason. I've got the reason that you're putting here.
Request for a recorded vote. You still want that?
Under the Constitution, Chair, for a recorded vote, you need 1/6 of the members present and able to vote to indicate that they'd be happy for a recorded vote, which is easy maths for me in scrutiny, because that's 2. So you need 2 members to say that they would be happy for a recorded vote. Okay, so then there's a recorded vote. Do you want me to do it then?
Kelly Williams, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Cadeirydd. So as with recorded votes at council, I'll read out the name of each member of the committee, and I'll ask you to indicate whether you are in favour of the proposal, against the proposal, or whether you wish to abstain. So, Councillor Michelle Blakely Walker,
In favour of the proposal.
Councillor James Elson,
In favour of the proposal.
Councillor John Harland,
Against.
Councillor Carol Holliday,
Sorry, can you repeat that, Councillor Holiday? Didn't hear you. Was that for?
or against?
Sorry, was that for or
On
against,
mute.
Councillor
It's
Holiday?
on mute.
You're on mute.
In favour.
Councillor
In
Allen.
favour. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Councillor Karen Edwards,
In favour.
Councillor Brian Jones,
In favour.
Councillor Ardwell Roberts,
Obliged.
Councillor Mervyn Parry,
Obliged.
Councillor Cheryl Williams.
Councillor Cheryl Williams, can you hear us?
I didn't then, it was complete silence then, but yeah, I'm for it.
Did you say for then?
Right. Councillor Hill Williams,
I'm abstaining.
Chair, the result of that vote is there 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 8 members voted in favour of the proposal, 2 against and 1 abstention. So the proposal is carried.
Great, thank you. It's been a great debate, a long debate, a worthy debate, and I'd just like to thank Emrys, Gwyneth, and I will see you in Cabinet. Diolch yn fawr iawn I pawb. Meeting closed. Thank you.